the only ones that don't ever work.
Fine. There's another fine.
It's amazing.
Every time, please. There you go. Every time.
Hold on.
It's going in a WhatsApp group. We set one up. Every time these fines come into the play.
So good.
Right, we have a night out in December. One lucky listener of the Sports Bar will be able to come on the night out and spend Cundy's cash.
Hold on. I can't believe I've just seen the Ange mask.
Fine.
Can't happen, mate. Can't happen, mate. It can't happen.
We will
the Chelsea's mentioned too. This is disgusting. Sandbags gear as well. Who done this? Who's right?
I've sat down with management.
No, you haven't.
I have.
There's no way management involved in this.
I sat down with management.
I tell you, right, late to the office.
Yeah.
Right, you better bring lots of cash with you.
I am never late when the red light comes on.
Oh, that's so. Yeah. It says in the office, not studio.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, but I decide when I turn up.
It's amazing. This is going to be so much.
How are you though, mate? You've got to
know
watch
what, mate? I'm all right. I'm okay.
Mate, you're looking good.
Listen,
good side.
Yes, on the back of limo bikes. By the way, go and Google them. You want to get to A to B, limo bikes.
Right, add that to the list.
What do you mean?
Promotions.
No, it's fair enough.
Promotions that are not part of the sports bar.
You're making this up. You're like a dictator.
Add it to the list. I was at the British Masters yesterday. I had a great time.
Right, okay,
fantastic.
There you go. Good for you. Well done.
Cernic Faldo.
You asked
Legends.
me. I never asked you where you were.
I know.
But
so if you're going to promote stuff,
but
we can both do that.
When I ask you, you can tell me that. You're offering this info. No one cares. I don't care.
More green jackets have been lost at the 12th than at the Augusta City Dry Cleaners. Rory McIlroy knows this better than most. But what is Amen Corner and why is it so iconic? The famous sequence has always been there since the Masters began in 1934. It didn't get its name until '58 though, when American sports writer Herbert Warren Wind, on the left, wrote, "At the farthest reach of the Augusta National Course, down in the Amen Corner." He drew inspiration from the 1933 jazz song Shouting in That Amen Corner by the Dorsey Brothers. The reason behind its difficulty is all in the sand and the water. Tournament officials don't even bother to count the balls lost in there each year, such is the sheer number. The 11th, named White Dogwood, is a downhill 520-yard par 4 with a pond to the left of the green and a bunker to the right. Both cause a lot of trouble each year. The 12th, Golden Bell, is perhaps the most famous hole in the world, with danger everywhere. Many aim for the flag, but look, get it even slightly wrong, and you're in the azaleas at the back, or the bunkers at the front, or even worse, Rays Creek. Or you can play it safe and aim for the open green on the left. You chicken. Tiger Woods once said, if you make 4 bogeys from Thursday to Sunday, you're doing well. And the highest ever score on that hole? 13. It's a par 3. Tom Weiskopf in 1980 was the sorry soul. Often the iconic Ben Hogan Bridge is the only thing players enjoy about Golden Bell. Even if you escape there unscathed though, you met with Azalea, the dogleg par 5 13th. It tempts players to go for the green in 2, but cut over those trees on the left at your peril. Every year, it seems, Amen Corner destroys someone's dreams. Rory McIlroy dropped 3 shots through here as his round unravelled in 2011. In 2016, a year after navigating Amen Corner expertly, Jordan Spieth shot a quadruple bogey on the 12th to throw away his green jacket. I mean, it sounds like my game, to be honest. So who'll be the next to be brought to their knees, praying for mercy after Amen Corner?
Hello and welcome to Danny Kelly's Trans-Europe Express. I'm Kevin Hatchar in the captain's chair this evening, and alongside me is the Harry Kane to my Ismail Saibari, the European football super brain that is Andy Brassell. The transfer deadline is looming, so we'll talk about deals that may happen or may not happen. We'll bring you the latest on Julian Alvarez's future. Is there any way back for him at Atletico Madrid, or will he move on? Jose Mourinho's having fun and smiling at Real Madrid. It's all very unsettling. Can it possibly last? It's been a dreadful week for Scottish clubs in Europe. We'll survey the wreckage with journalist Stuart Weir. We'll look back on the draws for the Champions League, the Europa League and Conference League. And of course, we'll zoom around the major leagues and some of the minor ones too. The Trans-Europe Express has left the station and you're all very welcome. Hi Andy, how are you?
Yeah, good. Yourself, Kev?
Yeah, very good. Very good. Very excited about this show. We've got a jam-packed 3 hours coming up. We should start with some of the football that's happening right now. I can tell you that in Serie A, it is Cagliari 0-1. Early goal from Hakan Çalhanoğlu. Andy, what else have you got for us?
Well, we're only about half an hour in Spain. It's Celta 0, Athletic 2. After a difficult start, Athletic needed something, and they've got
Go
it
on,
so
Edin
far.
Terzic. Go on.
Yeah, there we go. Alex Berenguer and Robert Navarro have scored the goals in that, but like I said, just 10 minutes before half-time there. We're now in the south of France, and it is 2-0 to Monaco against Marseille. Two teams who we'll probably be talking about a little bit over the show because they're both likely to lose players, especially Marseille, before the transfer deadline slam shut. I believe that's the correct terminology.
Yes.
Anyway,
you can't gently close a transfer window. You must slam it shut. We all know this.
No, it's not like coming in from the pub at midnight. It's not like that at all. It's a storming out, isn't it, really? Talking of storming out, we had Paris Brunner, who was a young teenage star of Dortmund, leaving a couple of years ago. And he could have got lost like a lot of other stars have done at Monaco when trying to come through. It's taken him a while, but he's in the team because Folarin Balogun is very much on the trade block at the moment. He's scored twice in this game, and maybe if we've got 5 minutes later, you can tell us a bit more about him.
Well, of course, the phrase is we'll always have Paris, but in Dortmund's case, that wasn't actually the case. Let's give you our poll for tonight, by the way. Of course, as we say, the draw has been made for the league phase of the Champions League, the Europa League and the Conference League as well. And the poll is, how many of the major European trophies will be won by English teams? Of course, Villa won the Europa League last season. Palace won the Conference League. Arsenal narrowly pipped to the post by PSG in the Champions League final. So your options are fairly self-explanatory. None, 1, 2, or all 3. You can text us on 81089 or get in touch with us via our various social media channels. But we're going to start with one of the biggest stories, not just of this week, but of the last few weeks in the transfer market, the situation with Julian Alvarez, the Atletico Madrid striker, who had his heart set on a move to Barcelona. He's been linked with Arsenal as well. Andy, the situation last weekend was that Julian was booed by the Atletico fans during and after the 2-2 draw with Villarreal, and he went down the tunnel on his own, a rather disconsolate figure, and had a scarf thrown at him, which he walked past. I thought it might have been sensible to pick it up, but he walked past it. There's been a lot happened since then, starting with the Barcelona president, Joan Laporta, making some rather ill-judged comments.
Yeah, unlike him, as
yeah,
you're implying there, Kev. He came out and said, look, we've made an offer for Julian Alvarez, and that offer still stands should Atletico Madrid change their minds. Were they going to change their minds? Well, not exactly. I mean, they put out this statement the day after, so this would have been Thursday, with it was always, if a statement is accompanied with an icon of a photo, stock photo of the club flag, you know it's serious. And
Comunicado Oficial.
Yeah, exactly. And they said, we're always open to transfer discussions if it comes from a professional, respectful place. but that has not been the case with Barcelona. And then, of course, Enrique Cerezo, the president, and Gil Marin, the managing director, both came out with something, certainly at the Champions League draw in the case of Gil Marin, saying we will never, ever, ever sell to Barcelona, which pretty much shut that door. Now, of course, there was this feeling that maybe Arsenal would be a fullback. It's not a great position, I think, from Arsenal's perspective, to feel that you're a fallback for, one of the better players in the world, I think it's fair to say. Yeah. And certainly not when you're expected to shell out 150 million euros plus to get that player in. From what I gather, Alvarez has never really given Arsenal much encouragement. He left the Premier League for a reason. And of course, from the World Cup onwards, in that public sortie, he nailed his colours to the mast pretty strongly that he only wanted to go to Barcelona. So once that was shut off, it felt to me like this story was over, or the transfer bit of it was over, because of course there's plenty of the story to go, Kev. Will he settle back in? Will he be accepted back in? Now, of course, he's come back into training. Obviously, there's been a great deal of mental strain on him, which I think you can understand, even if Atletico have every right to feel annoyed by this after the support and affection that they've given him in the past, particularly when last season he went 4 months without scoring a La Liga goal, and Diego Simeone never got on his back and he defended him publicly all the time. Maybe it could have been handled a little bit better. But it's interesting, since he's come back to training today, it's been clear to onlookers that a lot of the other Argentinians at Atletico, like Cuti Romero, who's just arrived, and Juan Musso, the reserve goalkeeper, have gone out of their way to show him a bit of affection, which I think is the way forward, because even if Atletico are comfortable with being uncomfortable, and they always are. I mean, we could talk about the Antoine Griezmann return, and I'm sure we will do in a little bit. But it's never really about that. It was more about, how will Alvarez feel? Will he be able to recover and have a good season?
Now, that is the really interesting thing, because Antoine Griezmann, it's not quite the same thing, but he angered Atleti fans back in 2018 when he was heavily linked with Barca, and then he went there a year later because he's obsessed with the NBA, like somebody who's on this show, quite frankly. He decided to make that ridiculous video, The Decision, which was basically a copy of what LeBron did. And he eventually returned, didn't he, in 2021? And it was a bit frosty to start with. He had this weird situation where, because of the terms of the loan, he could only play a certain number of minutes. It was a farce, really. But slowly but surely, he worked his way back into the affections of Atleti fans, became the club's record scorer, and the departure was very heartfelt and very emotional, and it was clear that he got his way back into the affections of Atletico fans. Now, my concern about this would be that Griezmann obviously is a very outgoing character. He's a totally different type of guy to Julian, who seems much more introverted. And so is it going to be much more difficult for him, do you think? Is he going to need help from Simeone?
Well, I think we've seen already that the Argentinian clique at Atletico is going to give him some help. But also, I don't think it is a personality thing per se. I think it's more about how you are as a player. And the reason he was chosen, the reason they spent a lot of money on him in the first place, is because they felt he could be a successor to Griezmann. Not just because of what he has technically, but what he gives on the pitch. And he gives absolutely everything. I think this is probably a time as good as any to recall that as fans, sometimes we need to have a bit of a word with ourselves, I think. Players do their best for themselves, for their careers and their family. And that's exactly what they should do. They are never going to care about our clubs like we do. And I know sometimes we fool ourselves that that's the case, and we like to believe that that's the case. And really, I think the optics of it are the main thing. Touch the badge at the right moment.
Yeah.
Thank the fans at the right moment. But let's not forget that they don't feel the same way about our clubs as we do, and they shouldn't. They really shouldn't. Maybe you've got the odd exception, like a Koke at Atleti, for example, but they're very rare, or Francesco Totti at Roma. These are very, very rare footballers and very, very rare people, and we shouldn't expect anyone really to be like that. But what Alvarez can do, okay, he's not a showman like Antoine Griezmann, but he's someone who, in terms of the amount of effort he puts in for the team, in terms of the industry, that's why Simeone and Atleti wanted him so badly.
Yeah.
I think if you get 4 to 6 good months out of him, this won't be forgotten, but I think it'll be ignored.
Yeah. And we are fickle as well. You know, we can be angry with the player. If he bangs in 10 in the next 10, then it's a completely different scenario. We are going to talk in the La Liga section later in the hour about Gabriel Jesus and his move from Arsenal to Barcelona, because, of course, that maybe suggests that Barcelona have finally given up hope. Coming up after the break, we're going to talk about the Champions League draw.
You said that if Chelsea sell Enzo Fernandez, then they'll need to replace him. I said I'm not as worried about that as some people are. You think that Chelsea will go back into the market, do you?
Yeah, I do, but not necessarily for one of the obvious candidates. As I say, I've done a bit of checking into Alex Scott's future this week. Bournemouth very confident of keeping him. They're not anticipating that Chelsea come back with a fresh offer. There's been no inquiry, despite reports to the contrary, for Adam Wharton to this point. One new name emerging overnight is Lamine Camara over at Monaco. It would probably only cost in the region of 50 to 60 million pounds. Young, up-and-coming player, fits the Blueco model, really. And obviously, if they were to sell Fernandes for 125 million and sign him for 60 million, then that is a decent profit.
I don't think it's urgent, and this is why. Chelsea are going to play only about 50 games this season. They're not in Europe, so they'll play League Cup, FA Cup and Premier League, but that's it. Reece James and Caicedo play in a system in which they will always play. Right, they will play. James is going to play in midfield.
He's always fit, Reece James, isn't he?
I'm just. He was fit last season for most of the season, apart from the World Cup.
Until we got to the World Cup, yeah.
He played for Chelsea for most of the season. I think, but one of the reasons he's playing in midfield is because of that reason, right? Because he can't go up and down and play like a wing back anymore. He certainly can't play at the demanding role that is going to be asked of the wing backs in the Xabi Alonso system. So playing him in the central midfield position makes sense, right? He played there last night, played there Monday night. Caicedo will play every game alongside him. If one of those two aren't there, Lavia will step in and play.
Always fit as well.
Henderson will step in and play. Barco, who played in there last night, was very good. He'll step in there and play. And even Jarell Harto has played in there as well.
You're listening to Trans-Europe Express. The Champions League draw took place on Thursday. Lots of really intriguing ties that we've got coming up. Just to mark your card on this, really. So what you have is a situation, if you don't know by now, where you have 4 pots of teams. And so what you'll have is 8 games in the league phase. You'll play 2 teams from pot 1, 2 from pot 2, 2 from pot 3, and 2 from pot 4. You'll play 4 games at home, 4 games away. The top 8 in the league of 36 will make it through to the last 16 as of right. And then between 9 and 24th position, those teams will play off for the right to meet those top 8 in the last 16. If you finish below 24th, then it's good night Vienna, and that's the end of the Champions League for you. Andy, let's take a look at who the English teams got. I felt that Liverpool probably got the most straightforward list of fixtures. Let's just go through them quickly. they got Atletico Madrid, Porto, Villarreal, and Lens at home, Inter, Club Brugge, Fenerbahce, and Lask away. Now, the reason I felt it was straightforward for them was that they've beaten Atletico Madrid at home last season. They won away at Inter last season as well. Villarreal would have been much tougher away than it is at home. Lens much tougher away than it is at home. You don't want to go to the Dragao, so to get Porto at home was good. So I look at that and think that could have been a lot worse for Liverpool. And given that Andoni Iraola is bedding in his ideas, it's not too bad.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And I just wonder, with where Liverpool are at the moment, whether the Champions League is almost a more realistic aim for them than the Premier League. Because we've seen them thrive in the competition before, and I think we'll see it again. It feels to me that Liverpool are quite a long way off being where they want to be, but those are the sort of fixtures where they can test themselves, and I think they will. I think they'll probably make top 8, but I think history tells us that as well. So slightly opposed to United because they've been out of it for a little while, and we'll come on to Manchester United's fixtures in a minute. But I think this gives Iraola time to flesh out some ideas, and he's got the quality players to get the wins that they need. The Premier League is less forgiving in terms of being able to do that, and not only because of the number of points you need to win it, but partly because of that, certainly.
I was in this studio on Thursday covering the Champions League draw. There were lots of oof moments for Manchester United when you looked at some of the games that they had. They've got Bayern at home, Roma, Leipzig, and Sabah, the Azerbaijani champions. Their away games got to go to Atletico Madrid, got to go to Sporting, Villarreal, and Como. That seemed pretty difficult to me, that run.
I think it's difficult to imagine them finishing top 8, like I said, at the moment. Not impossible, but difficult. In terms of them being able to get 10, 11 points and make the 24, I think they can do it.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I think they can win 3 of those 4 home games and find the other 2 points elsewhere. And in fact, I think depending on how it all clicks, I think we might be pleasantly surprised from a Manchester United perspective, and they might even manage to make that top 8. I was saying to Steve Bartram on United this week that I just feel that even though it seems strange to compare United and Villa because obviously they've got very different histories in the last 30 years, and Villa's recent surge is notable. But I just think that United actually, as things stand here and now, that they can learn from Villa. I think to go in like having very little recent experience in the Champions League, I think they've got the players to be able to get pretty deep into this competition. And if I was going to have a guess where United were going to finish now, I would say like last 8, maybe last 16, depending. I think the 24 is something they should be able to do. And I think a lot of the away games are more difficult on paper than they are in reality. I'd expect them to get something from Villarreal. I would expect them to get something from Como, even though really interested to see how Como get on because they're so smartly coached. We saw that again in their win at Napoli today. And, I think the question for them is really that they're converting from middle distance to marathon in the terms of the amount of games they're going to play this season. But I certainly feel that United, I think, can be steady and get themselves a decent way in this competition.
Let's cross over to the other side of Manchester then. Manchester City, they're in pot 1, so it's slightly different scenario in some ways in terms of, the pot they were drawn from. But of course, you do still play 2 from all 4 pots anyway. Home to PSG, home to Sporting, home to Napoli, home to AEK Athens with Luka Jovic up front. It's a very Trans-Europe Express forward line, actually, with Barnabas Varga as well. Away, Barcelona, Porto, Leipzig and Lens. Not entirely straightforward for a new manager at the helm.
Yeah, and not easy away trips, I would say. I think you look at starting off with Porto, who, as we'll maybe discuss later in other leagues, do not really concede a lot of goals and smartly coached under Francesco Farioli. Lens will see if their good start to the season lasts, but You know, they've been very, very solid in recent years. And the atmosphere, Arsenal fans will tell you from when they lost there a couple of years ago, the atmosphere at Bolear is unbelievable. Yeah. And then you've got Barcelona. And again, Leipzig, we know the talent's there. Can it click into a good team this season? And I think that is really the question.
I think the raw material's there. I do. Yeah. I think I covered them on Saturday, and it's early days, but if Antonio Nusa has the season that I think he needs to have, and he scored a brilliant goal on Saturday, if Christopher Nkunku looks as sharp as he did coming on, setting up a goal, if he carries on like that, that'll be really helpful. I think they're making some good signings. It looks like they're going to get Mark Guiu from Chelsea, Neil El Ainaoui from Roma, potentially. I think they're interesting. I think you're not quite going to get consistency, that if they click on a particular night, they could be awkward.
Yeah, I mean, I think really they are in a not entirely dissimilar situation to United. Of course, they've got more recent Champions League experience and a better squad. But I think the question really is not will they qualify? It's the question, do they make the 24 or do they make the 8?
Yeah.
City should make the 8. United could make the 8. City should make the 8. That's the difference. But really, it's how they come out the blocks. And if they're getting 9 points from the first 4, which I think they should be able to do. Obviously, the most difficult one is Paris Saint-Germain, but that is in Manchester. Then they're well set to get themselves in the 8, I think. And I think to recall what you were saying at the beginning, Kev, about the importance of the format and to remind people of the format. This is absolutely key in terms of getting in the top 8. It's not just being seeded; it's the fact that you're going to have to play 2 games less, which is absolutely massive. Any footballer would snap your hand off for that in February. And it's helpful for the clubs as well. And especially a team like City, where you've got a new coach, that bit of extra time to work together on the training ground, as well as a bit of R&R, is absolutely invaluable.
Aston Villa have got to play PSG again. Obviously played them in the knockout phase a couple of seasons ago. Just played them in the Super Cup and gave them a bit of a scare. Before losing that game. So Villa are at home to PSG, home to Dortmund, home to Fenerbahce, home to Viking, who we'll hear more about in just a moment. Away to Barcelona. What a great trip that is. Club Brugge, which was the scene of the famous Tyrone Mings. Don't pick the ball up. Oh, no, he's handled it. Never mind. Giving away that penalty. Away to Galatasaray and away to Slavia Prague. Gabby Agbonlahor made the point, and I absolutely agree with him. Yes, there's some difficult games in there, but what amazing away trips.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge part of it. We shouldn't overlook that. Part of the joy of being in Europe. Only one team can win it, and let's be realistic. Only one of about 4 teams can win it. I think probably, and Villa are probably not one of those, although I would expect them to have a good chance of going deep into the competition, despite all the changes there have been. Look, I think Leon Goretzka, whose last season at Bayern was very underrated, by the way, and someone who's trusted by coaches, was really trusted by Julian Nagelsmann for Germany. I think he'll be absolutely fantastic for them. But as you say, some really good games for Villa to get their teeth into. I think probably the difficulty with that fixture list means they'll end up somewhere between 9 and 24 rather than in the top 8. But look, they showed how well organised they are, how well drilled they are by Unai Emery, and they've been brilliant in Europe in the last couple of years.
We'll just give you Arsenal's. I think we probably both expect them to make the top 8. They've got Real Madrid at home, Borussia Dortmund at home, Lille at home, and Sabah at home. They go to Bayern. It's good that they're playing Bayern again. That was a great game last season. They'll go to Real Betis. They'll go to Napoli, and they'll go to Slavia Prague. Let's just very quickly, to wrap this section up, hear from friend of the show and Norwegian football expert, Lars Sivertsen. He's given us the lowdown on Bodø Glimt and Viking. For the first time, we're going to have 2 Norwegian sides in the group stage.
Hello, everyone. It is your resident Norwegian checking in just to say that, well, this week was pretty huge for us, with both Viking and Bodø/Glimt going through to the group stages of the Champions League. It means we have two teams from Norway in the group stages for the first time since 1999. So Viking from Stavanger, of course, they will have the incredible experience of welcoming Bayern Munich to their stadium. They will be playing away to Atletico Madrid. They showed a lot of heart in their two-legged affair against Dinamo Zagreb, even though they looked second best, frankly, for a lot of it. But they never gave up. They stuck with it. And in the end, that second half at home was really impressive. Bodø/Glimt, of course, their situation is slightly different. I mean, they are the team who have done a lot in this competition now, and certainly in European competition in general. Part of the reason we have two Norwegian teams in the tournament now is that Bodø/Glimt have raised our coefficient. And Bodø/Glimt will look at this draw. Yes, you have to go away to Bayern Munich. That's obviously tricky. Away to Napoli is going to be tricky. But they will look at teams like Lille at home, Lask at home, possibly even Brugge away. They will feel that these are games maybe they can get something out of. Even hosting Atletico Madrid at home in January in the Arctic Circle on that surface that they're so familiar with. I think Bodø/Glimt will go into this group stage with a lot of optimism. For Viking, it's likely to be tougher, but for them, it's very much a case of very excited to be part of this.
Any excuse to get those dulcet tones on the show. Coming up on Trans Europe Express, we're going to take a look at La Liga.
Emmanuel Petit joined the station yesterday and spoke on the difference that he could make to this Liverpool side.
On the left flank, this guy can make so many differences. And this is what's missing as well with Liverpool, you know, the speed, something that can be fast, you know, running with the ball, you know, that can not scare, you know, of fighting against defenders. And this is exactly what they are missing at Liverpool. They have good players, but they need, you know, modern football is based on the fast players, you know, who can make this decision within a few seconds, you know, can make differences, you know, with the ball. And I don't think many players, you know, at Liverpool actually for that.
Well, he's right, Gabby, isn't he? Oh. I mean, it's not all about pace, but I tell you what, nowadays, if you
pace kills, Ali.
Oh my goodness! Come on. Well, you know better than MD. You know better than MD, mate.
Pace kills, Ali, and Liverpool would be interesting how they set up now, Ali, with Barcola in the team, because they could half in certain games, Ali, sit back a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
Bring the opposition out and Barcola on the counter. Ooh.
I agree with you. However, I think that'd be very, very difficult to do for any Liverpool side at Anfield.
Yes,
because I'm not
sure.
More
away from home.
The fans just, and quite rightly, encourage them to go and attack, and have been used to that for years and years. So I hear what you're saying, but I think it'd be very difficult.
That threat though as well, Ali. You know, like just having that pace.
Yeah.
Like Sean says, it scares defenders.
Of course it does.
You know, you're okay. Right side centre half's got to squeeze over and double up on Barcola. You can't leave him 1v1. He's ripping any defender in the Premier League 1v1. He's unstoppable, Ali. You can't be quick and tall and long strides and everything. Like, he's a different animal.
talkSPORT Breakfast returns tomorrow morning from 6 a.m. as Jeff Stelling and Ali McCoist are joined by a host of guests, including former Manchester United and Aston Villa striker Dwight Yorke, former Leeds and Aston Villa manager David O'Leary, and former Spurs boss Harry Redknapp as they look back on another huge weekend in the world of sport. That's talkSPORT Breakfast from 6 a.m. tomorrow morning with Jeff Stelling and Ali McCoist. You will not want to miss it. Now, I can tell you that Inter are still 1-0 up at Cagliari in Serie A. Both John Stones and Curtis Jones have come on as second-half substitutes for Inter, and they're part of this rearguard action. Cagliari trying to get a leveller. Andy, what else have you got for us?
The second half just about to kick off between Celta and Athletic. Of course, 2-0 to the visitors. Half-time, just a double substitution. I was going to say if it was a treble substitution, but it's just a double substitution for Celta at half-time as they try and turn it around at Balaidos. 5 minutes of stoppage time have just begun on the south coast in France. Still Monaco 2, Marseille 0, with those two Paris Brunner goals making the difference.
Now we're going to take a look at La Liga in this section. Our headline is, are you Lewandowski in disguise? Because Rafinha has been doing a fine job at centre forward. Now, Barcelona have made a signing, Gabriel Jesus going in from Arsenal, but Rafinha is going to take some shifting because he looked really, really good, I thought, at centre forward against Athletic Club. And the way that was on Thursday, that game, Barcelona's next game is on Monday night, so that's tomorrow. The improvement of Rafinha under Hansi Flick has been something to behold, hasn't it? He has become simply one of the world's best players. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah, he has. And it's interesting, Kev, because he changed immediately under Hansi Flick to playing more of an inside left sort of role. So it's as if he's been gradually coached to be the replacement to Lewandowski. You know, he's played authentic centre forward since the start of this season, with them not bearing fruit, the pursuit of Julian Alvarez not bearing fruit, and them not buying anyone else up until this point. Of course, Ferran Torres went, Marcus Rashford left, although they were playing him on the left anyway. And it feels like everything that Rafinha has done to become one of the best players in the world in the last couple of years has been built into this point. I mean, really, last season, he had a few injuries. Of course, he's approaching 30 now. But every bit he missed, it underlined how good he's become and how important he's become, really. And the bits where he did come back, it didn't matter if he hadn't played for 6 weeks. He was brilliant as soon as he came back in the team. Actually. And I think in terms of like his football upbringing, he's not an academy guy. He came through street football in Brazil, and he really had to battle and fight to get to this point, which is exactly why when Barcelona, after 6 months of him being there, thought, yeah, did we really need to spend 75 mil on this guy? And looked at moving him on, he very publicly took a stand, a sort of reverse Julian Alvarez, saying, well, I've wanted to play for Barcelona forever and I'm not going anywhere. So saying, well, you can try and sell me, but it will be difficult for you.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you had the Hansi Flick factor taking it to the next level. But Flick was talking about him this week and saying everything that he does, so the positions he takes up, his physical power, his ability to dribble, to connect with other players and to press from the front is absolutely perfect for what Barcelona need. Now, look, I'm sure Gabriel Jesus will be very useful for them. But I expect Anthony Gordon to play a little bit of centre forward as well. And I think the fact that Karim Adeyemi has come in is going to allow Gordon to play more centrally, as he didn't do very well at the start of last season and did very well in the second half of last season.
Let's talk about that Gabriel Jesus move then, because it's impossible to know what Barcelona are getting, in the sense that he's had a horrible time with injury and that's really set him back at Arsenal. But this is a guy that at his best is a top centre forward, because it's not only his ability with the ball, his ability to score goals, but actually his pressing. And that's exactly what Hansi Flick wants. He wants two-way players in those forward positions. So people might scratch their heads at this and think, well, does that make much sense? But actually, if you've got a guy that's willing to work as hard without the ball as he is, and he's got all that experience, does make sense, doesn't it?
And he can play in any one of those front three positions as well, which is really interesting. I mean, I know Arsenal fans been a little bit shocked at the time when he signed from Manchester City, and he was asked in an interview with Brazilian television, where do you see yourself? And he's like, well, I'm a left winger. Which is funnily enough how no one else saw him, but how he worked for Brazil a lot of the time as well. Look, I think, and we said this with Rodri as well. I think when you're trying to recover from a major injury, the Premier League is a really tough place to do it. I think in a situation where he's not expected to play every week, where the physical engagement is a little bit less, I think we could see an extra level to Gabriel Jesus. I mean, I know this isn't strictly comparable because they're slightly different players, but if we're talking about being able to get the most out of yourself, having come out of a spell in which you're really effective in the Premier League, but maybe it's not for you anymore, let's look at Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, Deportivo A Coruña, scored his third in 3 games now, 37. He looks like a whippet. He looks absolutely unbelievable. And he's able to do more without the ball than he ever was in the Premier League as well.
Yeah, he came back from Saudi in amazing shape, didn't he? He clearly made that decision to really push in the final years of his career. Inter have won, by the way. They've won 1-0 at Cagliari. So fine rearguard action, the early winner from Hakan Çalhanoğlu.
Final whistle has gone in Monaco versus Marseille as well. Monaco 2, Marseille 0.
Atletico with a fine 3-1 win at Sevilla, who made a better start to the season than anybody really predicted. In fact, let's talk about the two kind of Seville clubs at the same time, because time is against us in this section. But Sevilla losing that game at home to Atletico, Alex Baena with a couple of goals. On the Betis side of things, some good stuff from Troy Parrott, but they got absolutely battered.
They did eventually. I mean, Parrott's first start, and he played really well. I mean, we've talked in recent weeks about the fact that he's not just been a goal scorer at AZ. He's used that time to really develop his all-round game. I think we saw that in this game at Levante. He was excellent. Certainly for the first half. Clearly he's getting himself into optimum shape, but he had 1 goal disallowed. Then he set up the opener for Marc Bartra, and then they got absolutely marmalised after half-time and ended up losing 5-2, which is amazing when you saw Carlos Espí, their best player, move on to Real Madrid this summer, and you thought, oh, this could be a really big problem for Levante. So for them to come back and be able to do that was excellent. For Sevilla, I guess it was more of a reality check against one of the very best sides in the division and one of the very best sides in Europe. Of course, Alex Baena has come back from the World Cup absolutely flying. And I think if you've not seen Atletico for a bit, treat yourself, because they're way different to how they used to be under Simeone. The football's like really incisive, really interesting. And, you had, I think, some redeeming features from Sevilla. Even when they were 3-0 down, they didn't chuck it in. Robbie Ure, who's making his presence felt, I think he'll do well for them. He had a hand in their goal as well that they eventually got. But, a bit of a reality check for them, I think it's fair to say.
My star of the week in Spain is Yassir Sabiri, who scored a brilliant hat-trick in the first half for Racing Santander in their 3-2 win over Elche. They had to hang on a bit in the second half, but Sabiri looked razor sharp. Andy, who's yours?
Alvaro Morata, back in Spain, back in the Spanish second division with Leganés. At least he's back in Madrid. His wife and his kids were all there for the press conference. And, of course, he got to fulfil presumably what is a lifelong dream after all the other trophies he's won in meeting Super Pepino, the cucumber mascot.
Oh, yes. Well, that's it. That's life complete now. He's finished.
I think so.
He's done. That's the final tick in the final box. Coming up after the break, we're going to take a look at Liga.
So he was shouting apparently
Allez l'homme, go Olympique Marseille, which of course is like putting oil in water when it comes to Lyon fans. They absolutely detest Olympique Marseille and they detest Guendouzi, and they showed that in their reaction. Simon, who's more at fault in these flashpoints though? Ferreira, the goalkeeping coach, reacted in a big way, and that led to widespread scuffles. Is it the provocateur, who in this case is Guendouzi, or is it those who take the bait? In this case, the Lyon fans, the Lyon players, and the Lyon goalkeeping coach.
Well, there's degrees of responsibility and culpability, but Guendouzi is the fire starter. Guendouzi's behaviour, as it was when he played in this country and decided that he could run around a football pitch telling everyone how poor they were in comparison to him, which ultimately got him shipped out of Arsenal.
Who did he tell that how much he
Neil
earned?
Maupay.
Neil Maupay of Brighton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it was Wenger, wasn't it? Just about enough of him, and to doubt.
It was Arteta. Arteta.
Was it Arteta?
Yeah, he did enough of him.
Sorry, yeah, it was Arteta who binned him off. And here he goes again. Now, people are responsible for their own behaviour, so everybody is culpable, and everybody, in terms of the professionals on the field, the players, and the support staff that have got involved, should have a consequence for it.
Yeah.
But he should have the primary consequence, because without his provocation, without his antagonising nature, without his ridiculous over egging of the pudding and baiting and inflammatory, the fans are not professional footballers.
The 150th anniversary test match in Melbourne with Visit Victoria and the Barmy Army.
Now, do you fancy an all-paid trip to Melbourne for 7 nights? Well, if you do, talkSPORT could be sending you and a mate down under in March. We're talking 7 nights in a hotel, return flights, spending money, a day trip along the Great Ocean Road, and you'll score 5-day tickets to the MCG to watch England take on Australia at the 150th anniversary test match. That's all thanks to our friends at Visit Victoria and the Barmy Army. For your chance to win, visit talksportwin.com or text WIN to 83338 by 6 p.m. on the 1st of September 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate, or send your name and number by post to Comp2 PO Box 3190 Colchester CO2 8GP to arrive by midnight on the 4th of September 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text WIN to 83338 now. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talksportwin.com. Let's wrap up the first hour on Trans-Europe Express by looking at Liga. And our headline for this, Luis Enrique still loves a remontada. And that is absolutely the case, Andy Brassell, because in the opening 2 matches of the Liga season for PSG, they have been behind the 8 ball. They've had to dig themselves out of trouble. And going into their 2-2 draw at Lille this weekend, they were 2-0 down in stoppage time.
Yeah, just leaving it a little bit later than they did at Rennes last week. Of course, at Rennes, they had the excuse, I guess, of the venue being moved from a home game to an away game, a very short notice. But it means they've had a really tough start to the season. And I think it's fair to say that they're not looking quite that sharp yet. They didn't look that sharp in the Super Cup. And they got a good early going over at Rennes, and you know they've gone to 2 of the best sides in the division straight out of the blocks. Now, look, I know you can say, oh, they've got greater financial power than everyone else, and they have, and I'm sure they will go on and win the league.
But they're still
human. Yeah, exactly. They are. And in terms of making it exciting, for them to go and have two difficult games first off, I think is a really interesting spin on things. But they'll come out of it, I think, feeling great because they've been able to really dig in and come back. And despite maybe not feeling their freshest, have been able to push in the back end of this. So goals from Vitinha and the even later one from Marquinhos in this one at Lille. Lille, who I thought played a really smart game actually under Davide Ancelotti, and the very early signs for him in Ligue 1 are pretty good, especially when you consider everything that's been going on with them transfer-wise. Of course, Biadi moving as well. Not that PSG have had it exactly quiet. I guess the thing is with PSG in terms of their transfers, Kev, they've known what's happening for a while. So they restocked that front part of the team. They made the Gonzalo Ramos sale early, and they knew that Barcola and Ibrahim Mbaye were going, and they kind of left them out of the squad, not as a punishment, but just as a bit of clarity, really.
We'll talk about what Barcola could do at Liverpool in a moment, but read quite an interesting article in L'Equipe this morning about whether Barcola's absence from PSG is going to make them not one-dimensional, but a little less unpredictable, because they have a lot of good technical players in that forward line, but they have a lot of guys that want the ball into feet, which is getting towards kind of Luis Enrique's ultimate idea of what he thinks the team should be. But with Barcola, you've got a real speed merchant, and they don't have that now.
Yeah, maybe not, but I guess the really interesting thing about Barcola, by the way, we shouldn't just define him as that. I think his pace is his most noticeable attribute. But on the other hand, what he's always been really good at doing is, particularly in terms of assisting others, good at making decisive contributions at pace. Now, what I do think has made them make the move and made him make the move, because it is mutual. You know, he made it clear he wasn't going to sign again. He wasn't going to sign an extension to his contract. And when he wants to force a move, he forces a move. He did that from Lyon to PSG in the first place. And I think, really, although the goal numbers are quite good last season, not the sort of money that Liverpool were paying for him quite good, but quite good, he really went backwards last season. Now, it was, I guess, the first part of his career where it wasn't just an upward trajectory. You know, coming behind Krzysztof Kvaratskhelia and realising you're not the main guy anymore and you're never going to be the main guy for the biggest matches, I think is quite difficult to cope with. He found a way to make himself impactful as a sub, and clearly he had the attributes to do that. And in that sense, maybe PSG will miss him, although they have something a little bit different in Magnus Akliush, and I think a better centre forward in Ferran. What Mika Hertz develops into, we don't really know yet, but promising last season at Ajax, is fair to say. And, you know, I think will be good to score goals. So in that sense, he's a replacement for Barcola.
Oh, they're all super players. It's just that, and you're absolutely right to say that Barcola is not just all about pace, because that's absolutely true. He's about creativity. He's about a load of things. And I think Liverpool fans are going to find that and be very excited by it. It's just interesting that kind of weapon isn't quite in the armoury. They've still got an unbelievable number of quality players in the forward positions, which is why he's being sold in the first place now. But it's just an interesting profile change, I think.
My question is, if you're PSG, why would you need that? No one ever plays up the pitch against you. It's just,
yeah, that's true.
It's just wasted. Whereas Barcola in the Premier League, you can see exactly how it's going to work, because the Premier League is about transition. So not so much if you're PSG in
copying
France,
the Bundesliga again. You see the Premier League.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I just think for him to be able to lean on his key characteristics while developing his game. Look, I know he's not a right-sided player. He always plays on the left, and yeah, he can play elsewhere, but basically he's always going to play on the left. I wonder if the sort of trajectory we're looking at is a sort of Thierry Henry trajectory. I wonder if he ends up in the centre, actually, because, as I've said before, there are people at PSG and staff at PSG who think that they could coach him into being a 30-goal a season guy. Now, that hasn't happened yet, and Kvaratskhelia is a massive fly in the Barcola ointment. Obviously, it's great for PSG, but it's not helped Barcola. And it's knocked him confidence-wise, although he's recovered some of that in the last couple of months. And as I said, found a way to make himself useful. But I think if you're looking at someone who's going to be the new Mo Salah, you need a wide player who's going to score you a ton of goals. Now, Mo Salah wasn't Mo Salah before he came to Liverpool. And I think maybe we have this discussion in 2 years' time or 3 years' time. Barcola wasn't real Barcola until he arrived at Liverpool. They hope it's the same thing all over again.
Just quickly, Andy, your star of the week. Maybe we should make it from Monaco Marseille, because there was one particular player who was head and shoulders above the rest. Yeah, it's not Paris Brunner, though. I'm going to go for Bruno Genesio, the Marseille coach, who has picked the team despite the fact that he knows that a load of those players could get sold. They're trying to sell at least 5 of those who are on the bench tonight. And he said earlier in the week, "I can't bring you any news yet about my eventual resignation." What a quote. Genesio, always a favourite on this show. My star of the week, Jessim Yassim, 20-year-old forward for Strasbourg. He scored twice in a 2-1 victory over Lens. That was a really important win, I think, for Strasbourg. And Yassim has started the season really well. I think Strasbourg have got some really interesting players in the building there, as is often the case. Who knows? Maybe they won't all make the move to Chelsea. You're listening to Trans-Europe Express.
I've got to stop you there, right? Because I've heard this guff from you and Gabby today, all right? Going on about Spurs overspending, overpaying for players.
Whoa,
all right?
wait,
and I can't believe Crookie has got the cheek to come on here as a Man United fan and say that Belieber's a good deal at 70 million. He was guff last season. He didn't play.
I think you'll find Belieber at 70 million is going to be better value for money than Savinho at 85.
Oh, mate, you're talking absolute crap.
I'll have a little bet for you. Let's have a little bet. Who has the better season?
You signed Anthony for 75 million. You sold Pogba for £100 million.
What's going on here? Why are you two falling out?
No, but
hold on, what's going on?
Because I keep hearing Crookie go on like Man United are doing good deals.
What's happening here? Why are you two
and
rowing?
Spurs are spending too much money on players. Like,
We'll have a forfeit at the end of the season, Jamie. Jason can judge at the end of the season. Whoever makes more impact for their club, Belieber or Savinho, the loser has to do a show. You do it in a United shirt. I'll do it in a
Crookie. Savinho could score 25 goals this season, and Cundy will still say Belieber's at it.
Belieber's going to be the better player. Belieber's going to be the better player.
Pointless bet.
No, he will be.
I'm just sick to death of seeing Crookie come on, going on like Spurs, just because we've got cash to spend, right? And we're throwing it about, right? And everyone's getting yump about it.
Hold on.
You know who you are, Jamie?
What's
you know
going
what Tottenham
on?
are? You know when you're a kid and you get your first Saturday job, right? It could be at a supermarket, it could be in a restaurant, it could be in a bar, and you get your first pay packet and you spend it in 24 hours.
What's wrong with you two? Jay.
Windows.
We've all done it, mate. Went out and bought Bentley with my signing on.
Jay. Hold on. Calm down, you two.
To succeed, people often say you need to think outside the box. In sports, every now and then someone does just that and comes up with a crazy idea for an exhibition event that nobody else could have dreamt up. Here are some of the most iconic we've ever seen. I mean, what an image. This was the setting for the Battle of the Surfaces in 2007 between Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal. The courts in Nadal's home of Mallorca reportedly took 19 days to build and cost £1.2 million. The players had to change their shoes every time they changed ends, and despite some dodgy bits of grass, they slugged out an epic three-setter, won by Nadal. But that's not even the most famous exhibition in tennis, because in 1973, we got the Battle of the Sexes, watched by 50 million people in the US alone. Billie Jean King's victory over Bobby Riggs was not only a landmark event for entertainment value, but also for its impact on the fight for gender equality in sports. I mean, the Battle of the Surfaces never got turned into a movie. Now, imagine a motor race that involved American Indy cars and European F1 cars. Well, that happened twice, back in 1957 and 58. The race of the two worlds took place at Monza and was nicknamed Monzanapolis. Despite legends like Sterling Moss, Phil Hill and Mike Hawthorne racing the F1 cars, the Americans won both years. Fans and the teams loved it, but it didn't make enough money, so got canned. For its cast list alone, though, the greatest exhibition might have to go to the Princess Diana Memorial match at Lord's. Mike Atherton captained a Marylebone Cricket Club side, with Sachin Tendulkar leading a rest of the world 11. Names like Wasim Akram, Sourav Ganguly, Andy Flower, Anil Kumble and Glenn McGrath turned out. The one-dayer, won by the rest of the world by 6 wickets, raised more than £1 million for the Princess of Wales Memorial Fund. Incredible all round.
You're listening to Danny Kelly's Trans-Europe Express with Kevin Hatchard and Andy Brassell. Coming up in the next hour, we'll have Mbappe Watch with Jose Mourinho's return to Real Madrid, a much less dramatic affair than expected so far. We'll tell you about Harry Kane's contract situation at Bayern. We'll also tell you about a new name in the Bundesliga and what on earth is going on in Scottish football. Dreadful week for Scottish clubs in Europe. It's all coming up on Trans-Europe Express. Right, you know the drill by now. It's time for this.
Sa carrière, le Paris Saint-Germain, Mbappé! Mbappé! Little give and go, Mbappe's in! Oh, it's 2-2! He scored twice in 2 minutes! Tête de Kylian Mbappé. Allez, Kylian!
As a commentator, I love that trail. All of those various bits of commentary, including our very own Jim Proudfoot on talkSPORT. It is Mbappe Watch, of course, and plenty of goals for Mbappe this week. Scored a hat-trick in a 4-1 win over Real Sociedad in midweek. Real Madrid catching up after a delayed start to the La Liga season. They were given that option because they had players who played deep in the World Cup, of course. Then Mbappe also scored earlier today in a 4-0 win over Malaga. What it means, Andy, is that under Jose Mourinho, 3 wins in 3 in La Liga, and they're scoring plenty of goals. And you did say before a ball was kicked in La Liga this season that it's worth remembering that amidst all the talk of him being pragmatic, the last time Mourinho was at the Bernabeu, Real Madrid scored plenty of goals.
Yeah, they did. And that was one of the things that doesn't really fit into the Mourinho narrative, but is true. And I think really when we've talked about how Mourinho might get on, and there've been doubts over him in recent years for a number of reasons, whether you think he's fortunate to have got this job or not, he's far more likely to be able to do a good job with the set of players he's got. The set of players he has now is not comparable to Fenerbahce or Roma, or even some incarnations that he had at Manchester United. This is an elite group of players who needed something else. So, look, whether ultimately we think this will yield trophies, and I have my doubts over that, I think Real Madrid are a much more engaging watch in the opening part of this season than a lot of people suspected. Now, look, there are other things to come. The rows with big players in the dressing room.
Haven't had any of that yet.
Well, yeah, because we're still in August.
And, that's never stopped him before.
yeah, maybe. But look, what happens when they get beaten by someone really good as well? I think all of those things are still yet to come. But what we're seeing at the moment is good Mourinho, calm Mourinho. And what we're seeing particularly is really good Jude Bellingham as well. And now, look, he outlined his plan for Jude Bellingham right at the start of this season. Now, I know Kylian Mbappe should be getting some of the love because A, it's his section, and B, he scored 4 goals in a matter of days. But Bellingham has been unbelievable in those wins over Real Sociedad on Wednesday and against Malaga today. And, Mourinho's pretty clear that he said from the beginning, I don't want to muck about. I want to play him as a number 10. Because I don't really want him having any defensive responsibility. I want him to take teams apart. And because we've been thinking so hard, for obvious reasons, for savoury and less savoury reasons, how he's going to click with Mbappe and how he's going to click with Vinny Jr. as a coach, I think very little time has been spent wondering how he's going to click with Jude Bellingham. Now, the early signs are excellent, but really Bellingham is everything that Mourinho likes as a player, not just because he's elite, but because he's a big character. And I think that's really, really important. And someone who I think will be feeling challenged in the right way by Mourinho as well. He's the sort of personality that likes to be held to account, that likes to be held to ridiculously high standards. And he does that of other people, doesn't he? Ever since he was at Dortmund, that's been used as a sort of stick to beat him with it on occasion, hasn't it?
See, that's the really interesting thing about Bellingham for me, because I adore that side of Jude Bellingham. I like the fact that he will call players out if they're not hitting that level, because he's a winner. He wants to win things. He wants to be competitive. He wants to win games and trophies for the fans. He has that inner drive. And it's like, well, if I'm doing this, why aren't you? And I think some people see that as uppity. Some people say, well, he's still a young player. Why is he kind of shouting the odds? He's an incredibly mature, just fantastic player. And I think he's a bit of a one-off, I believe. And I think because of that, certainly England fans should absolutely treasure him and cherish him. Because in the build-up to the World Cup, I said a couple of times on social media that I like that swagger, and the fact that he's becoming a real leader, I think, is something that should be praised. And there were some who believed on social media he might not even get in the team above Morgan Rogers. It was never going to happen. That's not a diss at Morgan Rogers, but this is one of the world's top midfielders.
You said that was never going to happen. You said that was never going to happen. It's all very comfortable for us to say that after the World Cup he had. I think it might have done. I'm not saying it ever should have done.
It felt like Tuchel was trying to get the final few percentage points. I would have been absolutely gobsmacked if Bellingham had been left out of the 11.
And I think it would have been mad, but I don't think it was that far off happening, certainly at one point. And I think sometimes some of the nuance is lost because, quite honestly, not everyone in this country sees Jude Bellingham play every week.
Yeah.
Now, I think
he was injured last season. He had that shoulder problem, didn't he? And he wasn't at his best for a while.
Yeah, I mean, look, getting that fixed was massively important for him. I mean, he obviously talked at great length about how, in his documentary, about how opponents were targeting it. And it was a huge thing for him to get it sorted out. But I think really it's interesting because his role has not been that clearly defined since Kylian Mbappe turned up at the club. And that has been, I think, a bit of a problem for Real Madrid. We've talked about this before, but I think it's worth mentioning again. We always frame it in terms of how do you fit Mbappe and Vinny in the same team. To me, that is the wrong question. Is how do you fit those two and Jude Bellingham in the same team? If Mourinho can do that, as he seems to have been able to do in the opening part of this season. And look, it's a very small sample size. And yes, they haven't played Barca or Atletico or any Champions League games yet.
Espanyol, Malaga and Real Sociedad so far. But...
Yes, but if he manages to do that, he will have done a huge part of his job at Real Madrid.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? So that I absolutely agree with you. I think the click between Bellingham and Mbappe could be sensational. And it already is. I mean, you already see kind of those moments anyway. But when you see what Bellingham did at the World Cup, bursting into the box, we've seen that at Dortmund. You know, he's got that ability, no doubt about it. But what that then means is that you've got to get the central midfield right. You've got to get the stuff behind them spot on. Now, what I found really interesting against Malaga, and again, caveat against Malaga, but Fede Valverde played a very disciplined game in a deep midfield position, didn't go bursting forward all the time like his instinct tells him to. Is that going to be one of the keys to getting this team purring in the way that it needs to?
It's huge.
You've got to have that cover behind them.
It's huge. And honestly, in a really good Real Madrid team, he always should have been that. Like Valverde off the leash is quite nice to watch, but it doesn't happen in an exceptional Real Madrid team.
No.
It's sort of like what Bruno Guimaraes was actually allowed to do in his last season or season and a half at Newcastle. It's fun to see him off the leash and doing what he does, but that means there are deficiencies in the other part of the team if he's the player that has to do that. And I think it's a similar thing with Valverde, really. I mean, look, I know a lot of people thought Rodri was the guy for them, and I'm sure he would have helped in a way, but I don't think he was an absolutely must get. If there was a reason to get him, it was so Barcelona didn't get him. I think it's fair to say. And look, I think there will probably be time to reflect, particularly after those bigger games that are coming that we've talked about, when you think, okay, do they need a different level of dedicated holding midfielder? And we're going to find out. But I think you look at so many of the players there that you wonder if Mourinho can get a bit more out of them. So Aurelien Tchouameni is going to be massively important as well. Interesting to see Camavinga getting some minutes as well this week, because there was this feeling that they were going to try and move him on. But you know, Camavinga's not been served well in terms of his development, I think, in the last year and a half either. He's been played all over the place and played in very unbalanced midfields as well.
Shoved over at left back.
Yeah, exactly. And he's still learning. You know, I think we have this idea sometimes that, you know, we've seen a player for a couple of seasons and, you know, he's past his teens. So we know what sort of player that he's going to be, and he's going to be that player forever. I don't think that's right. I think with the right coaching and the right motivation, you can change, you can develop, especially if it hasn't happened for a little while. And, you know, that is another big challenge for Mourinho, I think, and for Sami Khedira, obviously.
Well, actually, that takes us back to Bellingham, doesn't it? Because you might have had a preconceived idea. I know, I understand this whole idea of the number that he used to have, that used to be a mix of numbers because he could play various roles. But, you know, at Dortmund, he was often that kind of box-to-box guy, but he wasn't that 10. He would break into the box and do exciting things, but he wasn't that 10. And so as soon as he got to Real Madrid, he was kind of pressed into service as that. And now he's absolutely blossoming in that position. So I think you're right. I think absolutely players can change. One of the guys that's really fascinating is Trent Alexander-Arnold, because he's been linked with a return to Liverpool. But the truth is they're going to need him because they've got Denzel Dumfries, but they're going to need strength in depth in different positions. And I still think Mourinho's going to find a variety of roles for him to help the team. I think he'll be able to help the team in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll be tried out in midfield at some point. But I think in terms of him playing right back, I'm sure he'll get plenty of games, because if you know anything from watching Inter over the last couple of years, Denzel Dumfries is brilliant. He's not going to play 60 games this season. You know, there's just no chance of that happening. And we can say he's more Mourinho's type of fullback, but then you look at the assist for, and by the way, Bellingham's assist for Vinicius in the week is the best assist you'll see all season. Yeah. But to stick to Trent Alexander-Arnold, his assist today for Kylian Mbappe, the 1-2 between them, and then him whipping in the ball, not going to the byline, but whipping in the ball for Mbappe about 15 yards out, which he took on the volley the first time. Another brilliant Real Madrid goal this week, and an example of something that he can provide that Dumfries can't, because they're very, very different types of right backs, despite being primarily attacking, both of them.
Yeah, so really interesting times at Real Madrid. And I think what's exciting in La Liga, very early days, but Real Madrid look razor sharp. Barcelona do as well. So it could be a really good title race. Coming up after the break, we're going to talk about the Bundesliga and who on earth are Elversberg.
I wanted to ask you about Emi Martinez, who's also going to come into Chelsea as a goalkeeper. When you were told about this deal yesterday, you said good riddance. Why?
I didn't say that.
Didn't you not?
No, I didn't. I didn't say good riddance. No,
I think you did.
I said goodbye.
Did you?
Different to good riddance. No, listen, Emi Martinez has been fantastic for Aston Villa, but Aston Villa have been fantastic to Emi Martinez. When he joined from Arsenal, he was a nobody. Aston Villa turned him into...
He was an FA Cup winner when he joined.
Yeah, but... It's still a nobody, really, wasn't he? That's why he come to Aston Villa. Aston Villa turned him into the best goalkeeper in the world, and I just didn't like the way 3 years in a row he's been trying to leave every summer, which has upset some Villa fans. But when you look at his performances, his saves, everything about his style of play, even the negative stuff, the way he winds up opposition fan bases, Aston Villa fans have loved having him, and he'll go down as definitely a club legend.
It's interesting, isn't it? So I think there's different ways that people react when players leave football clubs. So I just wonder what the feeling is amongst those two fan bases about Emi Martinez going from Aston Villa to Chelsea. Do the Aston Villa fans really care about it anymore? They've got Suzuki now, so are they happy to move on? Or Aston Villa happy to move on from him? Yeah. And the same with Chelsea. Are they in a place where actually they're just comfortable to move on from Enzo?
He wasn't at his best last season, Emi Martinez.
Or at the World Cup.
At the World Cup wasn't at his best. 33 now. But I still think, Sam, that the £8.5 million, keepers play to an older age, don't they?
Yeah.
Oh, have we sold ourselves a bit short with the fee?
33.
No, I don't think he is. He's not at his prime, but I still think we could have got a bit more money for him.
The 150th anniversary test match in Melbourne with Visit Victoria and the Barmy Army.
Now, how'd you like the sound of an all-paid trip to Melbourne for 7 nights? Well, talkSPORT are sending one lucky listener and a mate down under this March. Thanks to Visit Victoria and the Barmy Army, you could be at the MCG watching England take on Australia at the 150th anniversary test match. We're talking 5-day match tickets, 7 nights hotel, an exclusive pre-match function with cricket legends, and a day trip to the Great Ocean Road with return flights and spending money included. Head to talksportwin.com right now to enter and for full T's and C's. Now we're going to head to the Bundesliga now, and our headline is Elversberg, we have liftoff. We'll explain why in just a little while. But actually, Andy, we're going to start with Bayern. 5-1 win on opening night against Stuttgart. I was in Germany to commentate on that one, and it was the same old story with Bayern against Stuttgart, because Stuttgart, in truth, are one of the best teams in Germany. There's no doubt about it. Play incredible football, had great success under Sebastian Hoeneß. He's turned them from a relegation-threatened team into a team that's twice qualified for the Champions League, twice reached the cup final, won one and lost one. But every time they face Vincent Kompany's Bayern, they get duffed up.
Yeah, and it's almost as if they would be better in the games against Bayern if they didn't know how good they were. Because one of the point of how it's worked so well, one of the reasons it's worked so well under Sebastian Hoeneß is even when they were in relegation trouble when he took over, there was no let's play defensively and eke out results. It was let's seek to dominate the opposition. And that's fine against pretty much everyone apart from Bayern. It's almost a little bit of an eagerness to show how good they are that leaves them unstuck, because they have parts of games against Bayern. They weren't 5-1 worse, I didn't think, on Friday night again. No. And you could say that about lots of other recent games they've played against Bayern. And they're stood there at the end always going, how did that happen to us? And obviously part of it is the incredible squad depth that Bayern have. And already I think we've seen the value in the players that they've got in, and great cameo from Ismail Saibari, of course, setting up a couple of goals when he came on and showing how he's going to be the perfect complement, really, to Harry Kane. Of course, this was a game in which Harry Kane didn't have to score or assist because Bayern were collectively so good.
Yeah, I think that squad's part is really important. It's really good that you've raised that, because Saibari and Brown coming in, Nathaniel Brown, the Germany left-back from Eintracht Frankfurt, I think they're stronger than last season. I think they are, yeah. Because Saibari, I think, gives you more than Nicholas Jackson. Rafa Guerreiro's a talented player, but injury-prone. So Brown coming in, I think he's going to end up being a better player than Guerreiro anyway, and I like Rafa Guerreiro. And they've just got so many options. And you think of the depth they've got. Lennart Karl, who's still only 18, but missed the World Cup with injury. He came on late on. You've got Serge Gnabry, who's still recovering from injury. They've got so many options. What it means is Jamal Musiala's had this, what he's described as a neurological dysfunction. He's felt faint at a couple of pre-season friendlies. So they've just taken him out the firing line. For now, it turns out he's been dealing with this for quite some time, and they've had a change in medication. And so he's just getting used to that. But what it means is they could just treat him with kid gloves and just be really careful with him. So Bayern are in a really good spot right now. Harry Kane, of course, they want to keep, and it seems he wants to stay. Max Ebel, the senior sporting director, has said that talks have been incredibly harmonious between a club that wants to keep the player and a player that wants to stay. So I think all the talk of him going to Barcelona or coming back to Spurs or joining another Premier League club, as we've said pretty much all along, Andy, that can go in the bin.
Yeah, and that's the impression I got from Harry Kane when I spoke to him last week after the Super Cup, that he's just so closely married to the culture of Bayern now that it's ticking all the boxes for him on and off the field. He loves the feeling of being able to compete and win stuff, and it's made people look at him completely differently as well. But I think in terms of the players they've brought in, you talked about Saibari, and we talked about Saibari being a compliment to him, or someone who can come in and give him a breather. I think the Nathaniel Brown thing is really interesting as well. I mean, he played it again in a quite advanced sort of number 10 role almost in this game. And it was because Alphonso Davies is is fit again. And he had his best game in absolutely yonks, I thought, because we all know what good player he is, but he's been fragile for a while. And to be able to really, it's something that Barcelona have sought to do in their recruitment, really, not replace the first 11, but find a way to, when they're dipping a little bit physically, to take a little bit of the pressure off them. And I think Bayern are in for a really long season, again, in the most positive way possible.
Yeah, I would agree. And one of the things that's really blown my mind, really, is how sharp Michael Olise looks, because he played almost every game for Bayern last season. He had a few rests towards the end of the season. Then he was a key figure for France, 7 assists at that World Cup. And he's come back as if, he hasn't played a game for 2 years, in a good way, because he looks so fresh. And he looks mentally fresh. He looks physically fresh. He's been absolutely phenomenal. Now, his deal ends in 2029. That's what they want to extend Harry Kane's deal to, 2029. And Jan Christian Dreesen, who's the CEO, said, we're quite relaxed about this. We're not in talks with him about a new deal. I'm sure that will happen eventually. But at the moment, they see no reason to extend Olise's deal. So it does seem like a very, very steady ship at the moment. Dortmund have had a good summer, I would say, generally, in terms of their recruitment. But a real blow for them. They beat Hamburg 2-0. But one of their summer signings, who scored in this game, is going to be missing for quite some time, Andy.
Yeah, and Yanis Constantelias has made a huge impact, really. They got him when the pursuit of Said Al-Mala fell through. And it's felt like Constantelias is actually a better fit for Dortmund to me. He was brilliant when he came on in the Super Cup. Started yesterday against Hamburg, scored the second goal in the 2-0 win, and then went down a little while afterwards in an innocuous sort of challenge. And you could tell from the way his leg moved that it was big trouble straight away. It has turned out to be an ACL. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, they don't want to go and spend a lot of money to replace him, but you've an idea about how they might replace him numerically, at least.
Yes, I think they might pull the Jadon Sancho emergency lever, and Sancho will just appear. Because obviously he's a free agent. Now, he's not going to come cheap. There'll be a certain amount of wages that he will expect. But the truth is, there hasn't been, as far as we know, I mean, there might have been a clamour to sign him, and he might have been rebuffing offers left, right and centre. But straight away, a lot of the media in Dortmund were saying, well, okay, it's time to go for Jadon Sancho.
Well, they'll be bidding against themselves, essentially, won't they? I think he's going to have to be like in the mood of compromise.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true, because Dortmund are going to be very wary about giving him a lot of money, and certainly giving him a long deal as well. And actually, some of the reports are suggesting it might even be a kind of, not a pay-as-you-play, but something along those lines, very heavily incentivized rather than a big basic salary. Look, Jadon's produced his best football at Dortmund. There's no getting away from that. In 2 spells now, there is something special about the place for him, and he has a lot of credit in the bank. As a player, as a guy, they like him at Dortmund, but it's got to be right for them, because they spent the summer trying to get these guys off the wage bill, guys like Brandt, guys like Zula, who they've given a huge amount of money to. So one of the big things this summer was to reshape the wage structure. So they can't bring him in on enormous money. So I'm fascinated to see how that goes. Another thing that was fascinating, we mentioned it at the top of the section, Elversberg, we have liftoff. Now, Elversberg played their first ever Bundesliga game on Saturday, something their coach Vincent Wagner described as like the moon landing for them. Yeah. And they had liftoff in the first 9 minutes because they scored twice. Now, Elversberg does not even have a train station. It doesn't even have a town hall. It's basically a village. They don't even have much parking. It's a very extraordinary place, really. But they beat Bayer Leverkusen 3-2, Andy. Now, for Elversberg, incredible. But Mark Flecken, the goalkeeper for Leverkusen, said we had a lack of mental capacity, a lack of energy, a lack of understanding of the game, and we weren't physically present, especially at the start of the 2 halves. Now, it's a brilliant story, Elversberg winning their first ever Bundesliga game. But the real story here is Leverkusen falling off the starting blocks.
Yeah, that's right. And I talked to a couple of people at Leverkusen who thought that they were in a good place, having had a far more stable summer And they've gone and just Ten Hag'd it in the opening game, haven't they? I mean, you know, they had plenty of opportunities, but went 3-0 down. They conceded 2 in a minute in the first half with a really good goal by Cole Campbell, who, you know, is a rare example of Elversberg spending some money. They bought him in from Borussia Dortmund, and he had a great game, I thought. They brought it back to 3-2, and it seemed like about 7 strikers on the pitch at the end, as Carles Martinez, the coach, who was losing his rag on the touchline a bit, looked really sort of desperate to get something out of it, but they couldn't get something out of it. Brilliant story for Elversberg, but from Leverkusen, we know there's that expectation now to make top 4. Not, it would be nice to make the top 4, but we must make the top 4. So I think that's sort of changed the sort of pressure at Leverkusen, and Carles Martinez is going to have to get used to that pretty quickly.
Yeah, pretty dreadful start for them. My star of the week in Germany, Yunus Ebnu Talib, who is a striker for Eintracht Frankfurt, scored a hat-trick for them in a 3-3 draw at Union Berlin. Frankfurt were 3-1 up at one stage, but then blew it late on, conceded a very late equaliser, so a point apiece for Mauro Lustrinelli and Adi Hutter, the 2 new coaches of those clubs. Andy, who's your star of the week?
Well, it could have been Syed El-Mala, who we talked about before, scored in his first match wearing the number 10 shirt for FC Köln. But in fact, it's going to be Theis Dallinga, who they signed after a couple of not great seasons in Bologna. He scored goals in France at Volume before. 2 great finishes from him as they won their opening game, quite surprisingly, against Hoffenheim.
Yeah, it was a super comeback, that one. Coming up after the break, we're going to take a look at what's happening in Serie A.
Danny Welbeck there, great start, but great career.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what?
Loving it, absolutely loving
looking at it, he played for Manchester United, Arsenal, there's Chelsea, obviously Brighton.
Brilliant.
But I think everywhere, if he goes back to Arsenal, if he goes back to Man United, he gets a great reception.
Yeah, it's good.
So he's one of them sort of guys who people just love watching him. And he's as I said before, I've spoke to a lot of people at Arsenal behind the scenes and whatever, and he says he's a great guy. He's really good for the dressing room areas as well. And that's why probably Chelsea have invested in him to help the young players out as well.
Speaking of Chelsea, this surprised me, and I think you, Ray, as well. Breaking news reached us late last night that Chelsea have agreed a £7.5 million deal to sign Villa's World Cup winning goalkeeper Martinez. $7.5 million.
Yeah, no, I didn't see the dot. I thought it was 75 million.
What's going on here?
Well, they've signed a new keeper, haven't they, Villa? And he was number 2 at the moment. But they're getting an absolute blinding deal there.
That doesn't make sense.
No. Yeah, I think Chelsea have got a really good deal, and you need a good goalkeeper. You need someone who's been there and done it, and he's certainly plays for his country, and he's been brilliant at Aston Villa.
Yeah.
So I think Chelsea, if you had a worry, if you're a Chelsea fan, it would be the goalkeeper. You know, watching that Fulham game, he made a couple of mistakes, and Martinez would probably go straight in, wouldn't he? Must do.
I think so,
because he's experienced now, and he makes some vital saves for Villa. So that, for me, that's a really good deal for Chelsea's point of view.
You're listening to Trans-Europe Express with Kevin Hatchard and Andy Brassell. We're going to talk about Serie A now, and our headline for this is the special relationship. We'll tell you why in just a moment, but we're going to start with Milan, Ruben Amorim's Milan, because they've made a perfect start to the Serie A season. 2 wins out of 2. They beat Venezia 2-0, and the central figure, Andy, Gonzalo Ramos, their most expensive signing ever. He scored the first goal, made the second, and he kind of needs this to work, doesn't he? Because at PSG, he became just a luxury backup guy. This is a real opportunity for him to be a main man somewhere, and Milan have spent so much money on him that it has to work for them too.
Yeah, a lot of pressure on him to get it right, and a lot of pressure on Milan as well, because they've bought a lot of strikers that haven't worked in the last couple of years for a lot of money. The likes of Santi Jimenez, Christopher Nkunku, for example. We're not even getting into the Nicholas Füllkrug loan.
Yeah. But that Jimenez thing's been really weird, hasn't it? Because we've seen him in the Netherlands and he played really well for Feyenoord, and there were a lot of Premier League clubs linked with him, and you thought there's a good player there, not an elite player, but there's a good player, and you thought that was going to work, and it just never remotely worked.
But they never showed enough faith in him, I think, and it was the same with Nkunku. You can't, push the boat out to get a player and decide 6 months down the line, actually, he's not it. I mean, it's difficult for Premier League clubs to do that, but Serie A clubs, we're talking about a Milan that, have lesser means than Como now. Obviously, Como very well backed, but, Serie A's not got the money that he used to have, which is why it was sort of an eye-popping figure that they paid Milan for Gonzalo Ramos. We know, by the way, that Santi Jimenez is off to Porto. That will be completed before the deadline. But, yeah, I think with Gonzalo Ramos, you're absolutely right. 25 now. There can be no more talk of promise or no opportunities, because he's going to get an opportunity every single week, and he needs to lead this team. And the amount he's cost, he needs to get upwards of 20 goals this season. We know he can do it. We really know he can do it. And this finish against Venezia, and I thought the 2-0 was a little bit flattering to Milan, if I'm being honest. I think Venezia are a team that are waiting to click. They've had an interesting transfer window as well, even though they're just promoted. And it's a game that Milan are expected to win. But I think really what underlines how good Venezia were and how competitive Venezia were on the night, that really Gonzalo Ramos had to pull one of his best finishes out the bag to get them going. It was a brilliant finish. And if he can do more of that, then they'll be on the way. But I still have a few doubts about Milan, to be honest.
What I liked about the performance from Ramos was that he got himself into good positions time and time again, and he'd actually missed a few before the goal that he scored. He'd had one saved, he'd had another one that he didn't make the most of, and you thought, okay, is it going to be one of those days? But actually, he kept on plugging away, kept on getting in the right positions, and eventually got his goal. Ruben Amorim afterwards said, of course he's a striker, we paid a lot of money because he scores goals, but actually the thing that means a lot is the way that he plays, the way he works, the way he connects the game. And when you're the lone striker in a team like that, as we've seen with Amorim teams, you have to do a lot of work, not just score goals.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And he's never had a problem with that, because he can be a sort of quasi-target man, or that guy who runs in behind, does the work down the channels. He does all of that. And that one of those runs down the channels led to his goal, actually. So in terms of him having the versatility to do it, I don't have any question about that at all.
We're going to talk later in the show about Rafael Leao going to Galatasaray, but I suppose more generally, just quickly on Milan before we move on, there is a sense of renewal, isn't there? Because let's make no bones about it, last season was a disaster. To go from title contenders to a team that doesn't even make the Champions League in the final weeks of the season, I mean, maybe if they hadn't started as well as they did, it might not have felt so bad, but the way they kind of chucked it in the closing weeks was a real blow. So there is that sense of renewal, isn't there? And it has to work.
Yeah, it does. And there's still a question of, what's the leadership? Who's the leader, really?
Well, Cardinale fired everyone.
Yeah, for the moment, I think it's sort of overshadowed a bit by, firstly, as you said, people expecting something from Ramos and getting at least a hint of it at the moment. And also the fact that I was saying goodbye because it was the first home game of the season to Franco Baresi, laying his number 6 shirt over his seat in the stand as well. But again, even that is just a reminder of the dimensions of this club, really. We know that European football has changed financially, but they need to be in the Champions League.
2 clubs, well, one who's in the Champions League, of course, Como, Napoli as well. Fascinating game between them, I thought. Napoli beaten 2-1 at home by Como. The winner was a nonsense in terms of his brilliant finish by Duvikas, who I really, really like. But Napoli's defending was all over the place and not what you associate with Max Allegri. I didn't think they were great in their opening win either. I thought they got a bit lucky with that win, and they weren't great in this game either. Obviously, Allegri's got in there, and you have to give him a bit of wriggle room, and you have to give him a bit of time to bed in. But there's a lot of pressure there at Napoli because of what they've done in the last few years, and he does have to deliver.
Yeah, he does. And obviously, when you play the sort of football that he does, only results are going to get people on your side, because it ain't going to be the aesthetics, I think it's fair to say. But look, I think if we compare this to his start with Milan last season, that was very positive. Really, the first home game with Napoli was almost a carbon copy of his first game with Milan, because he came out afterwards when they lost at home to Cremonese and in that game last season, who were eventually relegated, of course. And he said, look, we can't defend like that or we're not going to get anywhere. And he said pretty much the same thing after the game today, really. If that has the same sort of effect for Napoli, we're looking at them going on an absolutely legendary run, because Milan were really difficult to score past in the first 2/3 of last season. That's what they need to get right. The fact that Alessandro Buongiorno is out at the moment is a bit of an issue. They've been a little hamstrung in the market. Of course, as we said before, they didn't get Gabriel Jesus because he's gone to Barcelona. So, ideally, they're going to do a little bit of work around the margins in the last couple of days. But as well, they have players coming back to fitness. So De Bruyne's not 100% fit at the moment. We've got David Neres, who's coming back from a long-term issue. And he was saying afterwards, Allegri, that Scott McTominay's not properly fit at the moment. So normally, you'd have transfer window and then a lovely little international break. But not even that until the 3rd week of September this year.
Absolutely. It's all changed with the way the international break is going to work this season. It's all been squeezed into one. My star of the week in Italy, the Frosinone striker, Antonio Raimondo. He scored twice in an extraordinary 3-0 win at Fiorentina. Fiorentina, who've been spending heavily, brought in Franco Mastantuono from Real Madrid, made some really eye-catching signings, although Moise Kean is trying to make a move away from Fiorentina to Como. But Fiorentina are an absolute mess at the moment. Fabio Grosso, their coach, said, we're too fragile, we lack ferocity, and we lack solidity. So not going well for Fiorentina, but Raimondo, a couple of great goals, played really well in that game. Andy, who's your star of the week?
Well, mine's going to be Nico Gonzalez, who all summer has been hanging out for a move from Juventus to Atletico Madrid. Doesn't look like that's happening now, not just because they can't come to terms on a fee, but because he came on this weekend against Parma and just absolutely turned the game. He was brilliant and got the opening goal in that as well, completely electrified the game. Good save by Vicario to make sure they stayed in front in that as well. He's started pretty well there. We should also say in that win for Inter tonight at Cagliari, not just John Stones playing, but debut for Curtis Jones in that. Jed Spence is not quite ready, Christian Kivu said after the game.
Yeah, Stones and Jones coming on in that second half. Coming up after the break, we're going to take a look at Scottish clubs who've been having a tough time of it in Europe.
Jamie, what you on about,
the
mate?
Villa.
You're just jealous, mate. I've been hearing you all day.
What are you on about?
You're talking guff, mate. Just because you're jealous.
What are you on about?
You're jealous.
How can you finish 17th 2 years in a row and spend $500 million?
Because we've got the cash, Gabs.
Yeah, but that ain't fair, mate.
See? Jealous.
It ain't fair, Cundy.
No, I agree. Do you know what? I agree with Gabby on this. I totally agree with him.
No.
This has got no. I'm not.
Win the Europa League,
I'm not.
and we can't flipping spend.
I'm not picking sides. I'm telling you now. Villa and Newcastle should be able to spend.
Cry me a river.
No, 100.
Cry me a river.
Jay, listen.
Thank you, Cundy.
I totally agree with him.
Gabs,
totally agree with him.
Stop crying, mate.
Jamie.
Stop crying,
Totally
mate.
agree with him.
Stop crying.
Jamie.
Gabs.
You're signing rejects from Manchester City.
Good players,
is
mate.
unwanted. Savino's a reject. Robertson's a reject from Liverpool, not wanted anymore. Conor Gallagher's a reject from Atletico Madrid. Spurs are signing rejects.
Hold on a minute. You sold 5 of your best players. All right, you're absolute guff this season. Oh, the rules! Oh, the rules! I thought you was a big club. I thought you was a big club.
Well, we are a big club, but
you're
the
not,
rules
though.
don't let us.
You're not, though.
Because you
Can't
and
spend
your
any money.
cartel, top 6, you and Cundy, don't want Villa in there.
Don't bring me into this. I have nothing to do with this, Gabby.
Mate, keep you out of it. Only big boys allowed in the top 6, mate. You're not big. You have to sell your best players. We don't have to sell our best players.
17th, right, and go and spend £500 million.
Because we're a big club, Gabs. Stop whinging.
Now the clock is ticking and we're just 2 days away from the transfer window closing. Stay tuned as our team of transfer insiders exclusively reveals who your club is signing and confirm every done deal before anyone else. Adrian Durham and legendary Premier League manager Steve Bruce will be on air on transfer deadline day from 7 p.m. before the king of transfers and talkSPORT's very own Jim White returns to front his second show of the day from 10 p.m. until the 11 o'clock deadline. Don't miss transfer deadline day this Tuesday, the 1st of September. Download our free talkSPORT app, watch us on your smart TV or YouTube, and follow the live blog at talksport.com. Now we're going to wrap up the hour by looking at what's been a tough week for Scottish clubs because Celtic seemed to have one foot in the league phase of the Champions League, but absolutely blew it against the Austrian champions Lask, eventually losing in extra time. A tough exit for Rangers from Europe as well, as they lost to Jablonec, and other Scottish teams went out as well. Well done to Hearts for making progress, though, in the Conference League, but they tumbled down the European trophies as well earlier in the summer. Delighted to be joined by a long-time friend of talkSPORT, the Scottish football journalist Stuart Weir. Stuart, great to have you with us.
Evening, guys.
Stuart, really tough week for Scottish football. We talked a lot in the build-up about how important it was for Scottish clubs to get through and improve the coefficient, much in the way that Bodø Glimt have done for Norwegian football. And now they've got 2 clubs in the league phase of the Champions League with Viking in there as well. Let's start with Celtic, because that was a real hammer blow. Obviously, they only just won the league last season, but they were expecting to go through against Lask and were in an extraordinarily good position.
Yeah, they were. I mean, anybody who'd seen Celtic in the previous matches would have cautioned, even with a 3-0 win from the first leg, that this was not going to be easy. However, when you score an away goal and go 4-0 up in a tie, you expect to see your name up in lights in the next round of the tournament. It wasn't to be for Celtic. It was an absolute collapse, a disaster for them. And they tumbled down into the Europa League, which again means they still have European football, means they still have the tickets for the league phase for that particular tournament. But there's nothing like the earner that the Champions League is. And that's, you know, again, you mentioned their coefficient. for a good few seasons, Scottish football has been riding on the back of Rangers unexpectedly reaching the Europa League final. And so those points are slowly but surely dwindling away. And now we find ourselves with our European clubs next season probably facing 2 and 3 matches just to qualify. And that makes it really, really difficult.
I think Hibs are probably quite a good example of that, aren't they, Stuart? Because in terms of what they did in the qualifiers, I mean, I went to the home game against Malasheva before they really got going with 2 really quite difficult opponents in Skandia and then in Ghent this week. I mean, they were so agonisingly close. Obviously, Celtic are the headline, but in terms of upping the coefficient, how much would it have meant for Hibs to get through? Because to have both Hearts and Hibs taking Scottish football into Edinburgh or European football into Edinburgh, like between now and Christmas, that would have been big, right?
That'd been huge, absolutely massive. And, you know, and times change. I mean, Celtic winning the European Cup, that was still when the world was black and white. But I remember going back to the early 90s with Rangers in the Champions League and working for a newspaper, a city newspaper in Glasgow, and the lift that gave even newspaper sales. Now, again, times are different, but the Hibs and Hearts contesting European competitions up until Christmas would have been absolutely massive and would have had people talking about, you know, Scottish football again and Edinburgh again and, you know, in glowing terms. Whereas you look at it now, Hibs again, just when it looked as if they were ready to qualify, out they go. Hearts, yes, they've done well in midweek, but that's off the back of absolutely hammered against Benfica in the Europa League. So Scottish football isn't really in a great place. Europe isn't for everyone. And I think the Scottish clubs actually made that very, very clear in midweek.
Obviously, there's been a fair bit of churn in terms of the managerial position at both Celtic and Rangers recently. Rangers had that experiment with Russell Martin that absolutely didn't work. Danny Royle was there for a while. I was being very kind there, of course. Leicester are going through something very similar at the moment. Celtic obviously brought in Wilfried Nancy. Goodbye, Wilfried. We barely knew you. It's a strange old situation in that regard with the lack of stability. But one of the things that stands out to me is sometimes the lack of imagination in the transfer market as well, because Celtic have money, Rangers have money as well to a certain extent. But actually, there seem very few signings that really raise the eyebrows and you think they could really develop something here. Obviously, it does happen sometimes, but should it happen more?
Well, the first thing I have to say there is, Kev, that, you know, whereas before Scottish football was, I wouldn't say awash with money, but there was a lot of money swirling around. It just isn't there anymore. And, you know, the whole domestic market, the whole thing about Scottish football and the players that are being raised through the clubs and through the academies, if somebody comes in with a couple of £1 million for a talented youngster, they disappear down south. They might never, ever see the light of day in Scottish football until they've basically been kicked out or rejected by a big English club. And that's very, very sad. And it doesn't do much for the youngsters coming through to know that they could end up going to the English Premiership. But the effect is they'll just be in the reserves. The big money signings that used to really whet the appetite, you know, the likes of Celtic signing Hartson and Sutton and guys like that, or Rangers signing Laudrup or Gascoigne, they're long gone. And the other thing is, I have to say, the coefficient points are very important, but it's also public perception. If you're a player and Celtic come knocking at your door, the first thing you're going to ask is, well, am I stepping up or am I going to be playing in the Champions League? If the answer is not, why would you come to Scotland? And you know, it's okay, Dundee United fans or Aberdeen fans having a giggle at the Old Firm or any of the other Scottish clubs going out of Europe. The fact of the matter is, you're almost laughing at your own history. Back in the day when Fergie took Aberdeen to European success, or Jim McLean took Dundee United to European success, That just isn't happening anymore. And, you know, I know we didn't think we would see Scottish clubs in European finals maybe after Celtic or Rangers in the noughties. Lo and behold, Rangers turned up a final a couple of years ago, but that was more through stealth and hard work rather than any of the glamour signings that Rangers made. And, you know, you really want Scottish football to be attractive to people from the continent or even down south.
Finally, Stuart, we've talked about how Hibs heartbreakingly missed out, and we've talked about Celtic, we've talked about Hearts just about getting themselves European football. I feel Rangers have sort of got off the hook a little bit, especially with their recent European history, and they would have been like a team that you would have expected to go relatively deep into the Conference League if they'd have got in it. How big a blow is this for them?
Andy, I have to say that was the worst performance I have ever seen from a Rangers side in Europe, and arguably one of the worst performances I've ever seen from a Rangers team. Full stop. You take, you know, Rangers were a side that were knocked out of the Scottish Cup by Berwick Rangers all those years ago, and people point a finger at that, saying that was the worst day in their playing history. No, it wasn't. That Rangers side was assembled with a bit of cash, but nothing like how much money they've spent over the last couple of years. And that is an embarrassment. The performance level was an embarrassment. And you almost thought that the players were actually saying, well, as long as I can keep my Lamborghini or Bentley in the car park, it's okay, rather than actually getting out there and actually trying to be a success as a player. I think it's come too easy for a lot of Rangers players. They sign for the club, they put on the jersey, and they think that's it. The fans are currently letting them know that's not enough. And you saw Rangers earlier today beating Aberdeen. I mean, I wouldn't say it was quite like Rock's Drift, but it wasn't far off it. As Jock Wallace used to say, this is a game for fixed bayonets. And over the next couple of weeks and months, that'll be the kind of games that Rangers will be playing.
And on that evocative image, we'll say thank you to Stuart Weir. Plenty still to come on Trans Europe Express.
The only ones that don't ever work.
Fine. There's another fine.
It's amazing.
Every time, please. There you go. Every time.
Hold on.
It's going in a WhatsApp group. We set one up. Every time these fines come into the play.
So good.
Right, we have a night out in December. One lucky listener of the Sports Bar will be able to come on the night out and spend Cundy's cash.
Hold on. I can't believe I've just seen the Ange mask.
Fine.
Can't happen, mate. Can't happen, mate. That can't happen.
We will
the Chelsea's mentioned too. This is sandbags gear as well. Who done this? Who's right?
I've sat down with management.
No, you haven't.
I have.
There's no way management involved in this.
I sat down with management.
I tell you, right, late to the office.
Yeah.
Right, you better bring lots of cash with you.
I'm never late when the red light comes on.
Oh, that's so. Yeah. It says in the office, not studio.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, but I decide when I turn up.
It's amazing. This is going to be so much.
How are you though, mate? You've got to
you know
watch
what, mate? I'm all right. I'm okay.
Mate, you're looking good.
Listen,
good side.
Yes, on the back of limo bikes. By the way, go and Google them. You want to get to A to B, limo bike.
Right, add that to the list.
What do you mean?
Promotions.
No, it's fair enough.
Promotions that are not part of the sports bar.
You're making this up. You're like a dictator.
Add it to the list. I was at the British Masters yesterday. I had a great time.
Right, okay,
fantastic.
There you go. Good for you. Well done.
Sir Nick Faldo.
You asked
Legends.
me. I never asked you where you were.
I know.
But
so if you're going to promote stuff,
but
we can both do that.
When I ask you, you can tell me that. You're offering this info. No one cares. I don't care.
To succeed, people often say you need to think outside the box. In sports, every now and then someone does just that and comes up with a crazy idea for an exhibition event that nobody else could have dreamt up. Here are some of the most iconic we've ever seen. I mean, what an image. This was the setting for the Battle of the Surfaces in 2007 between Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal. The courts in Nadal's home of Mallorca reportedly took 19 days to build and cost £1.2 million. The players had to change their shoes every time they changed ends, and despite some dodgy bits of grass, they slugged out an epic three-setter, won by Nadal. But that's not even the most famous exhibition in tennis, because in 1973, we got the Battle of the Sexes, watched by 50 million people in the US alone. Billie Jean King's victory over Bobby Riggs was not only a landmark event for entertainment value, but also for its impact on the fight for gender equality in sports. I mean, the Battle of the Surfaces never got turned into a movie. Now, imagine a motor race that involved American Indy cars and European F1 cars. Well, that happened twice, back in 1957 and 58. The race of the two worlds took place at Monza and was nicknamed Monzanapolis. Despite legends like Sterling Moss, Phil Hill and Mike Hawthorne racing the F1 cars, the Americans won both years. Fans and the teams loved it, but it didn't make enough money, so got canned. For its cast list alone, though, the greatest exhibition might have to go to the Princess Diana Memorial match at Lord's. Mike Atherton captained a Marylebone Cricket Club side, with Sachin Tendulkar leading a rest of the world 11. Names like Wasim Akram, Zurav Ganguly, Andy Flower and Neil Kumble and Glenn McGrath turned out. The one-dayer, won by the rest of the world by 6 wickets, raised more than £1 million for the Princess of Wales Memorial Fund. Incredible all round.
You're listening to Danny Kelly's Trans-Europe Express. As always, we're sending all of our love to Danny and looking forward very much to the day that he can be back in the captain's chair. Kevin Hatchar and Andy Brassell with you for the next hour. We're going to get the latest from South America with Tim Vickery. We'll look back at the draws for the Europa League and the Conference League. Lots of transfer updates heading your way. And we're going to zoom around the leagues. A fun hour in store on Trans-Europe Express. Right, time for one of my favourite bits of the show. We're zooming across to South America to join Tim Vickery, friend of the show, brother of the show, let's say. Tim, I normally kind of ask you about Spurs, but I kind of daren't do it really. But an early view on how things are going. My feeling is maybe it's a couple of steps back to take a few forward, maybe.
I hope so. And I've hardly seen anything yet. You know, because I've been on holiday, I've come back and I've just got to get back on top of my own beat, which is South American football. And it's been a month, nearly a month on holiday, and then all the World Cup. So much has changed, in like 3 months or whatever. So I'm still scurrying around, going to games, watching games, trying to get on top of that. So thankfully, probably for my own state of mental health, Tottenham Hotspur haven't filled up a great deal of my consciousness so far. But we hope for better days. Is De Zerbi a fella whose idea has been and gone? I don't know. We will find out.
Well, Tim, to cheer us all up, I think you've got an update for me on Thiago Almada.
Yes, yeah, Thiago Almada, who left Atletico Madrid from the Argentine World Cup squad, went back home to join River Plate, and this time last week you were wanting updates. You were wanting actually text messages. You said, and I nearly did it, but I nearly did it, but I thought no, he's probably getting some kip. So I've refrained, and I've gathered it all up, gathered all the nuts, like some kind of South American squirrel, for to share with you now. This time last week, they were just about to kick off at home to Vélez Sarsfield, River Plate. They've spent a lot of money. It's not only Thiago Almada, Otamendi, Angel Correa, another veteran of European football. There's others that they've recently spent money on. There's a fellow called Kevin Castaño, Colombian holding midfielder, was in the World Cup squad, got off the bench, I think, a couple of times. Spent a fortune on him. They got nothing out of him, and nothing really has been working. Now, they went 2-0 up on Vélez Sarsfield, and they're kind of coasting. And then what happens? The moment I very, very nearly sent you a message, a bad back pass from our friend Thiago Almada lets in Vélez Sarsfield to bring it back to 2-1. And then Manuel Lanzini, late of your parish and late of River Plate, popped up with the equaliser. So they drew 2-2, 1 win in 6 games. This is a disaster. With the amount of money that they have, they've got the biggest capacity stadium in South America. They played in the Club World Cup. They really should be roasting everyone in Argentina, but they haven't been. And it got worse. In midweek, they're playing a game was put back a week because of the earthquake in Colombia. They're playing against Santa Fe of Colombia, second leg at home, for a place in the quarterfinals of the Copa Sudamericana, the Europa League equivalent, with the possibility, if they get through the quarterfinal, possibility of a semi-final meeting with Boca Juniors. So this is a big night. This is a huge, huge night. I know it's only the second string competition, but there's a lot at stake here. And they go 1-0 up, and they really should have seen Santa Fe off. When Santa Fe, the centre forward is Hugo Rodallega, 41 years of age, and several of the team are not a great deal younger. Colombian football works on the basis of just sell them as soon as possible, and the veterans are what you got left. But that defence again, as soon as the defence comes under pressure, it creaks and it cracks, and they let in a goal from a penalty. So it went to a penalty shootout. It went to one of the most epic penalty shootouts. River Plate have match point with the 5th penalty. Santos Borré, another one that they've just brought back, experienced Colombian international striker, hits the post with the match point. So we on and on we go. The opponents, Santa Fe, have 2 match points, both saved by Beltran, the young River Plate goalkeeper, who's almost like the only bright spark. And then we've had 10 penalties. We go to the 11th penalty, and it has to be the goalkeepers. And Beltran of River Plate, he's got to go and take one. He's the hero of the hour until he steps up for his penalty, slips, and just sends it miles over the bar, and the Santa Fe goalkeeper smacks it in. So it's Santa Fe who move on. River Plate go out, and that's the end of the coach, Eduardo Coudet, who gave up a gig in Spain, to come back to take on River Plate. Well, it didn't last very long. He's gone. So they're playing under a caretaker coach, Leo Ponzio, who had a lot of time at Zaragoza as a kind of utility player. They're away at Banfield. Thiago Almada scored a penalty, and they went 2-0 up, and it nearly all went wrong that time, but they got through to a 3-2 win that gives them a little bit of breathing space. So far, maybe staying at Madrid and putting up with the ire of Diego Simeone would have been more palatable for Thiago Almada than crossing the Atlantic and going back home to River Plate.
I was used to sign Leo Ponzio on Football Manager, which shows how old I am. One of the beauties of this part of the show, Tim, is that me and Andy know we can just hurl anything at you, and we know that you'll know about it. And this is very self-indulgent of me, but I want to ask on behalf of Ipswich fans about Ezequiel Palacios, because he's a player I've watched a lot for Bayer Leverkusen. He's had some injury problems. That was a real eyebrow raiser for me. I like him very much, though. Well, just wanted to ask, just in general, your view of the player and what you think Ipswich fans might be getting.
Well, I think he's a terrific player. I really, really like him. And you mentioned there the injury problems, which I think were a blight on last season there at Leverkusen. But he's given them, 6 seasons of very solid service. He's very classy. He only played once in the World Cup. He's one of their reserve midfielders. And it was in the final group game against Jordan. Do you remember where he played, Kev?
Was it not in midfield? I should know. I commentated on that game. Shows my football amnesia.
It all goes in and one out.
I know, exactly. You have to rewrite the files for the next game, you see. Go on.
Indeed. Yeah, it was right back. he filled in at right back, which was something that I haven't seen him do before. And I really like him. I think he's very, very authoritative, foot on the ball. Perhaps, and if you were comparing with Enzo Fernandez, perhaps he lacks just that little half yard and doesn't offer you as much in the last third of the field, perhaps. But what interests me, there's two things that stand out. One is, what an example of the financial power of the Premier League. That a newly promoted club like Ipswich can sign someone of this caliber. But also, and I wonder if you'll agree with me on this one, I suspect that he's at his best in the possession-based side. Will Ipswich be able to have enough of the ball to bring the good side of his game out? Yeah. Or is he going to be chasing shadows too much, and Ipswich won't be able to get the best out of him?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think when Leverkusen were playing their pretty possession-based football, short passes, moving teams around, he really came to the fore, I felt. Marcelo Gallardo, who has the statue, does he not? Is that not still the case at River? Yeah, looks as though he might try and earn another statue, but at national team level.
Yes, looks like in the next few days he's going to be lined up as Ecuador coach. I actually wondered if there might have been a place for him at Uruguay as well, because it's where he finished his playing career and started his coaching career, Gallardo. But Ecuador, who usually have Argentine coaches, there's a reason for that, I think, in that Ecuador it's two warring cities. The mountain capital of Quito and the sprawling port city of Guayaquil, and they feud with each other. And so bringing in a foreign coach gives a kind of neutrality in this civil war that always goes on with Ecuador. And what makes the job attractive, I think, is just the amount of youth talent that's coming through. Although, as you saw in the World Cup, not in the centre forward positions. Although there were options I thought we should have played. There's one who didn't even go in the squad, a fellow called Kenny Arroyo, who had a little spell in Turkey. He's now in Brazil. He's a winger and he's got goals in him. And I couldn't believe. I think he should have been in the first team, and let alone left out of the squad. I like Sarmiento as well, who's gone from Santander to Germany last year. So there's lots of young talent to work with Ecuador because the youth production has been so good. But what I think is really interesting here is, and Gallardo is 50, and you think of the national team gig as being either for novices or for veterans. And he clearly isn't one or the other, is he? And a few years ago, during that epic spell that he had with River Plate, the first spell with River Plate, you thought, he's going to get in a position where he can more or less name his club in Europe. And maybe he stayed too long. And then when he left, he stayed out of the loop too long, went to Saudi, that didn't work. Back to River Plate, that seldom works, and it really, really didn't this time. So now a fella who you thought might go from maybe perhaps Paris Saint-Germain, because he's got playing experience in Europe. You wondered if he'd end up there, or one of the big Spanish giants. Instead of which, at the age of 50, looks like he's very far down the road to becoming a national team coach with Ecuador.
Now, Tim, I've seen on your notes a question of why the legal status of stepson is taking on importance in Brazil. I'm just wondering if it's a similar situation to one I experienced when I went to visit Danny in Ireland last year. And I'd always been under the impression that had I been at that level as a footballer, which, by the way, was never a possibility, I could have qualified for England, Wales, or the Republic of Ireland. But I actually found out on that trip that I'm a generation less Irish than I thought I was. So actually, I was right all along. When I didn't get picked for Wales by John Toshak, it was all over. So is this a similar situation or completely different?
No. Yeah, well, it didn't stop Tony Cascarino, did it? Who played all those times for Ireland despite not being qualified at all. No, this is to do with club ownership. It's all very new, this thing with owners in Brazil. It's only this current decade. And the Palmeiras, they're not a business. They're the old associative model, but their club president is Leila Pereira, who's done an excellent job there at Palmeiras. Now, Vasco da Gama are a business, or they have had one of these businesses. They were involved with those 777 partners people. And one of the problems with Brazilian clubs getting into this world is they're desperate for the money, and it's really hard to have the expertise to do the due diligence into who these people are. And in retrospect, they never should have got into bed with 777. But they're not the only ones who discovered that lesson the hard way. Anyway, they're trying to sell the thing again. They need an injection of cash, and the fella who's there, it looks like with his wallet in his hand, is the stepson of the Palmeiras president. Now, the rules and regulations say that Brazilian clubs, two involved in the same competition, they can't be owned by or directed by blood parents with a parent, relations. Relations. Sorry, parents is relations in Portuguese. No relations. But is a stepson a relation? Is that a blood relation? It's not explicitly ruled out in the legislation, and so it looks like this one might have to be tested. It may even go to the courts. And in the Brazilian court system, as it goes through different stages, it's entirely possible that the different stages will give entirely different answers. So at the moment, that leaves the whole thing in limbo because we're not sure of the legal status of a stepson.
Sensational bit of intrigue to finish with. That's why it's always such a joy to have Tim Vickery on the show. Tim, thank you so much. And you earned that holiday. Don't feel guilty about being out of the loop. You very much earned that time off. Plenty still to come on Trans Europe Express. After the break, we're going to take a look back at the draws for the Europa League and the Conference League.
You said that if Chelsea sell Enzo Fernandez, then they'll need to replace him. I said I'm not as worried about that as some people are. You think that Chelsea will go back into the market, do you?
Yeah, I do, but not necessarily for one of the obvious candidates. As I say, I've done a bit of checking into Alex Scott's future this week. Bournemouth very confident of keeping him. They're not anticipating that Chelsea come back with a fresh offer. There's been no inquiry, despite reports to the contrary, for Adam Wharton to this point. One new name emerging overnight is Lamine Camara over at Monaco. It would probably only cost in the region of 50 to 60 million pounds. Young, up-and-coming player, fits the Blueco model, really. And obviously, if they were to sell Fernandez for 125 million and sign him for 60 million, then that is a decent profit.
I don't think it's urgent, and this is why. Chelsea are going to play only about 50 games this season. They're not in Europe, so they'll play League Cup, FA Cup and Premier League, but that's it. Reece James and Caicedo play in a system in which they will always play. Right, they will play. James is going to play in midfield.
He's always fit, Reece James, isn't he?
I'm just. He was fit last season for most of the season, apart from the World Cup.
Until we got to the World Cup, yeah.
He played for Chelsea for most of the season, I think. But one of the reasons he's playing in midfield is because of that reason, right? Because he can't go up and down and play like a wing back anymore. He certainly can't play at the demanding role that is going to be asked of the wing backs in the Xabi Alonso system. So playing him in the central midfield position makes sense, right? He played there last night, played there Monday night. Caicedo will play every game alongside him. If one of those two aren't there, Lavia will step in and play.
Always fit as well.
Henderson will step in and play. Barco, who played in there last night, was very good. He'll step in there and play. And even Jarell Harto has played in there as well.
The 150th anniversary test match in Melbourne with Visit Victoria and the Barmy Army.
Now, do you fancy an all-expenses-paid trip to Melbourne for 7 nights? Well, if you do, talkSPORT could be sending you and a mate down under in March. We're talking 7 nights in a hotel, return flights, spending money, a day trip along the Great Ocean Road, and you'll score 5-day tickets to the MCG to watch England take on Australia at the 150th anniversary Test match. That's all thanks to our friends at Visit Victoria and the Barmy Army. For your chance to win, visit talksportwin.com or text WIN to 83338 by 6 p.m. on the 1st of September 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate, or send your name and number by post to Comp2, PO Box 3190, Colchester, CO2 8GP, to arrive by midnight on the 4th of September 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text WIN to 83338 now. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talksportwin.com. Right, it's time to dig into the draws for both the Europa League and the Conference League. There are 4 Premier League teams involved across both competitions. Palace, Bournemouth and Sunderland in the Europa League. And Bournemouth and Sunderland in Europe, Andy, they're going to face Milan. Both of them. Sunderland are going to San Siro. I mean, if you'd said that to Sunderland fans a few years ago, they'd have thought you were mad. I mean, it's an incredible turn of events. And Brighton are going to be in the Conference League. They battered Tromsø in the second leg of their tie. So they've qualified, and they've got a game against Monaco. And they've also got to go to Athens to take on Panathinaikos. First of all, it's just an amazing reward for Bournemouth and Sunderland and Brighton, but specifically Bournemouth and Sunderland, because it's just incredible times for both clubs.
Yeah, it is. And I think when you look at Sunderland, they went into the final game of last season hoping that they might get some European football and ended up with the Europa League when they'd have been delirious, really, with the Conference League. So I think you could argue that maybe there's not such a massive gap between the Europa League and the Conference League since the reformatting of the Champions League. That's been one of the knock-on effects. But nevertheless, I think this season is a great season to be in the Europa League, bearing in mind you have Milan in there, you have Juventus in there, you have Benfica in there, you have real names of substance. And obviously, there's no doubt that Milan is the one that really springs out. And of course, Sunderland fans have been really enjoying, like, reliving the famous Newcastle fan song, Have You Ever Seen a Macam in Milan? You're about to get your answer.
Well, yeah.
But I think you look at, and I think you always have to look at this, especially for a team that haven't qualified for ages, from a perspective of the trips that you're going to get to take. And, Lech Poznan is a brilliant one as well. Those fans are going to have a terrific time on the road. And I think they've got a great mix between games that are winnable and games that will really excite the fans as well. And I think the away ones are more exciting than the home ones. You would expect them, if not to get maximum points from the home ones, I think they'll do well out of them. And I think top 8, going back to what we were talking about before in terms of the formatting, is well possible for Sunderland, even though I know some of their supporters are a little bit frustrated about the lack of progress in the transfer market. We'll see what happens in the next couple of days. But of course, the atmosphere in the Stadium of Light is brilliant as well. That first game against RZ, who are good opposition and have got good recent European experience, I think will be really interesting. From Bournemouth's perspective, I mean, obviously, it's a whole different ballgame in terms of the home games. There was this speculation that they wouldn't be able to play the games at home because of the size of broadcast operation needed. That has proved to be unfounded, which is great for them. And I was saying on H&J the other day, Milan going to Bournemouth is a little bit like when you had Ronaldinho playing at Fratton Park all those years back. It's just one of those absolutely beautiful moments, really, for I guess, a less big name of English football.
And also, Bournemouth are going to go to Real Sociedad, San Sebastian, one of my favourite places on earth. So it is a wonderful, wonderful place to go.
Are you saying they should sail there? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, that would work, actually. That would work really well. Oh, and they're going to Vigo. That's brilliant. They just get 2 trips to northern Spain. Yeah, works out perfectly. Yeah, and that's part of the fun. We mentioned that earlier on, didn't we, when we talked about the Champions League? For the match-going fans, some of these trips are just absolutely phenomenal, and that's part of the magic. One thing we should talk about, and you've alluded to it already, actually, the Europa League is stronger this time around with some of the clubs that are going to be in there. And I'm not having this argument of, oh, look at the competition. It doesn't get the drop down from the Champions League. Good. Should never have had. It shouldn't be allowed that you mess up the Champions League and you get to waltz straight into the Europa League. No. I'm quite happy to silo all these competitions and keep them separate. But we do have big hitters in the Europa League, and we also have bigger hitters in the Conference League, don't we?
Yeah, we do. So if you think about some of the names in there, Ajax, who've spent a lot of money this summer, signed some big players. Monaco, of course, they got that win tonight against Marseille, and I'm sure they'll be challenging near the top of Ligue 1 this season under Philippe Luis. I think it's really interesting because we've looked at, again, since the reformatting, it's felt as if really some of the magic has come away from the Europa League and the Conference League. Now, look, I'm sure Villa fans and Palace fans are not having that at all, particularly Palace fans, who've never been in Europe before and they end up winning a trophy at the end of it. But I think, you're never sure when you create a competition what all the side effects are going to be. And with the Conference League in particular, after Roma, who again in their own right are an absolutely massive club, even though they've not got a storied history in European competition, you think it's for smaller clubs. And it is until you get to the back end of it and the big clubs go, right, okay, sleeves up, it's our turn now, and they take it over. And I think there's been a sense, particularly since the reformatting of the Champions League, that Premier League clubs are just going to monopolise the Europa League and the Conference League. I know Lars has talked about perhaps there could be exclusions, and it always felt a bit weird, like Chelsea being in it. Of course, Manchester City the season after weren't a million miles away from being in the Conference League, were they, before picking up slightly at the end of the season. But it feels as if this will be more of an even playing field. Now, look, Palace showed that you can have like next to no European experience as a club and still get it done. And I certainly felt they got to the pitch of the competition as the competition went on. They struggled a little bit in the groups where they were expected to make the play, and then they found it easier when they were playing better teams, really. But I think it's going to be a competitive season. Now, if we look at Ajax, for example, the last time that they started in the second qualifying round of a European competition, they got to the semi-final and to the brink of the final in 2019 in the Champions League. So they should be a proper contender for this as well. And it remains to be seen how seriously Milan and Juventus take this. I mean, given what happened to them in Serie A last season, they should be, at the very least, looking at this as a potential route to the Champions League, because they can't afford to miss it again.
Yeah, and, they've found... I mean, they've had runs, haven't they, in the Champions League? Obviously, Milan had that run to the semis, didn't they, got to the final. So they have had success, but, I mean, that's it. It feels like an opportunity for both of those clubs, really. And if you're serious as Milan and Juventus, you should feel like you have the squad to at least give it a go, I would have thought. I completely get what people say when they talk about exclusions, but my only problem with that is that you'd rob Palace fans of the joy of what they achieved last season, which was absolutely incredible, and they're moments that those Palace fans will remember forever. And you mentioned Roma. Roma took that so seriously, and their fans absolutely had a whale of a time and saw that as a major achievement. So it's difficult, isn't it? Because if you block out a country to stop, say, Chelsea or another big hitter who've dropped down a bit from getting into it, you then maybe block some English clubs, I mean, like Brighton, who are going to be in it and are going to have a whale of a time.
Yeah, I don't think really people are looking at it from that perspective. But, if you've had X amount of Champions League appearances in the last 10 seasons, for example, or the last 5 seasons, then you don't get allowed in it. Look, I don't think you can do that. And I think part of it is like for teams that are in the Conference League, we've just been talking about it with the eye-catching fixtures. Part of it's being able to take these teams on.
Yes.
And if one of them falls out of a competition above, I don't mean in the course of a season, because as you quite rightly pointed out, that's been remedied. But like the opportunity, if you're Bournemouth, you couldn't have expected like 4 weeks before the end of the season that you're playing at Dean Court against Milan. It's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
As
great.
you say, that's the reward. That's the reward. Whether Bournemouth are capable of winning this competition or not, and I think they're probably capable of going fairly deep into it. We'll see how things go under Marco Rosa. But
he's got lots of European experience.
Yeah, and if you look at their recruitment over the last couple of seasons, it's been excellent. So, I think we should imagine that they'll be at least able to have a go at going deep into it. But really, that's the reward, isn't it? Getting that. I think that's a huge part of it.
Only half an hour left, unfortunately, on Trans Europe Express. After the break, we're going to talk transfers.
Emmanuel Petit joined the station yesterday and spoke on the difference that he could make to this Liverpool side.
On the left flank, this guy can make so many differences. And this is what missing as well with Liverpool, the speed, something that can be fast, running with the ball, that can not scare, of fighting against defenders. And this is exactly what they are missing at Liverpool. They have good players, but they need, modern football is based on the fast players, who can make this decision within a few seconds, can make differences, with the ball. And I don't think many players, at Liverpool actually for that.
Well, he's right, Gabby, isn't he? Oh. I mean, it's not all about pace, but I tell you what, nowadays, if you
pace kills, Ali.
Oh my goodness!
Come on.
Well, you know better than MD. You know better than MD, mate.
Pace kills, Ali, and Liverpool would be interesting how they set up now, Ali, with Barcola in the team, because they could half in certain games, Ali, sit back a little bit,
Yeah.
Bring the opposition out and Barcola on the counter. Ooh.
I agree with you. However, I think that'd be very, very difficult to do for any Liverpool side at Anfield.
Yes,
because I'm not
sure.
More
away from home.
The fans just, and quite rightly, encourage them to go and attack, and have been used to that for years and years. So I hear what you're saying, but I think it'd be very difficult.
That threat though as well, Ali. Just having that pace.
Yeah.
Like Sean says, it scares defenders.
Of course it does.
You're okay. Right side centre half's got to squeeze over and double up on Barcola. You can't leave him 1v1. He's ripping any defender in the Premier League 1v1. He's unstoppable, Ali. You can't be quick and tall and long strides and everything. He's a different animal.
Welcome back to Trans Europe Express. We're going to take a look at transfers for the next few minutes because, of course, the transfer window does slam shut. It doesn't close gently. It slams shut on September the 1st. That's Tuesday. We're going to have you covered, by the way, on talkSPORT. Some great shows, which, of course, involve the king of transfers, Jim White. Andy, let's talk about Rafael Leao first, making the move from Milan to Galatasaray. Now, Galatasaray obviously is a great destination, and you look at some of the top stars they've got there now, and Turkish football in general, as we've talked about in recent weeks, you know, really making moves and really spending money, and has that money from sponsors and other sources. But the truth is, at one stage with Rafael Leao, we talked about him making a really big money move to one of the elite clubs in the Champions League, and that hasn't happened.
No, and that has allowed Galatasaray this opportunity, really. But he's been stuck for a while, I feel. I mean, bear in mind the last time Milan won Serie A, he was Serie A MVP. But he's just not kicked on to that next level. And I feel the beginning of the end for him at Milan was in the beginning bit under Paulo Fonseca, where there was the perception that him and Theo Hernandez were living large like superstars and not putting enough in. Now, I'm not sure that's especially fair, but the optics of it, and you remember in Paulo Fonseca's first game in charge when they'd come on as substitutes, Theo Hernandez and Rafael Leao, and they were stood on the other side of the pitch having a drink and not in the huddle with Fonseca. And I think that's part of being a star, isn't it? It's not just, you know, playing well. It's realising how every situation looks. It's being aware of the optics of it all as well. And, you know, I think when we talk about the eye test, anyone who's seen Rafael Leao in the flesh, on his day, he's like totally convincing.
He's phenomenal. When he's on it, he's absolutely phenomenal. But this is the problem, though, isn't it? Because in a way that makes it worse, because when you see him, especially live, as you say, he can be such a viscerally thrilling player to watch, and he'll leave 4 or 5 players trailing in his wake, and you'll think, right, where's that all the time? And that's the final test for so many players, not just him. It's can you do it week after week? And he's had spells at Milan where he's been great.
Yeah, and even when he's below his best, he's still relatively productive. So I think this will be a sort of wake-up call, really, to say, look, this is your last chance, really, to succeed consistently at this level. You know, he's going to play some huge matches with Galatasaray domestically and particularly in the Champions League. This is them looking to go on a level further, following the model of recruiting prime age superstars that they have done in the last couple of years. The friendship with Victor Osimhen is important, not only because I think they'll click together on the pitch, but Osimhen played a big part in recruiting him as well.
Which means he's staying because, of course, he's been linked with clubs elsewhere as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, nothing really around that has come from the club or from Victor Osimhen himself, we must add. But yeah, I think the two of them working together should be pretty good. And that'll probably mean Barish going on the right. You've got a hell of a front three there. So that'll be really, really interesting. Season after season, I think they could do with another defensive midfield player, but they're not interested in that. And that's fine from a neutral perspective, isn't it? But look, it's a huge opportunity for Leao. He looked delighted to be there on Friday night at the game at Göztepe, when, of course, him and Osimhen was stuck together like glue as well. So, yeah, interested to see what he can do there.
It looks like Karim Benzema's leaving Al Hilal. Of course, Ollie Watkins is going there as their new striker. I think, I mean, we haven't got time for it now, really, but I think there's a discussion to be had at some stage about Watkins' move to Al Hilal, only because in days gone by, I think one of the big hitters in maybe Italy would have been able to make that move. But you look at the overall package financially, they just can't now. You know, you could have seen him going to a Juve or a Milan. I know, obviously, Milan already had Gonzalo Ramos, but what I mean is that's the kind of move they would have made. And now that's not happening so much. So that's something we can talk about later. But
yeah, I think the financial side of that's really interesting, actually. And you could say the same for Rafael Leao. I mean, Villa were never going to be able to align with the same sort of salary that Galatasaray would. Nowhere near. I'm not saying that's the only reason he's going, but that will be a big part of it.
Yeah. So it means that Benzema suddenly is available, and that's intriguing for a lot of clubs.
It is, and there's a possibility he'll retire. Remember, he's going to be 39 a couple of days before Christmas, and I don't think anyone really can know what sort of level he'll be at for European football. The fact is, he's not going to come back and join a mid-table club. You know, this is a guy who's played for teams that win stuff throughout his career and has had an incredible career. I thought what was quite interesting as well, he's clearly got an eye on his legacy, because he did say when asked about going back to Lyon, a club that he still has an enormous amount of affection for and obviously doesn't have a bottomless pit of money at the moment. Sometimes it's best just to leave it as it is. And he said, I don't mean this from a perspective of being scared to go back. I would love to go back to Lyon, but perhaps I'd be better serving the club in another way. So I think he's got his eye on a management role there. So I would be quite surprised if he came back to Europe, even though personally I would love to see it.
I want to ask you about Matias Fernandez-Pardo, because there's a guy that is currently at Lille, but they've just made a move to sign Ayasu Ueda, who's a striker from Feyenoord. And that might just loosen the situation for Fernandez-Pardo, because you've told us on here that Lille's position has been, well, unless we get the money, we're not letting you go. And Fernandez-Pardo was wanted to go. I just wonder if that removes the logjam a bit. It still means a Premier League club, if they want him, needs to pay the money. But if they do pay the money, whether it's Newcastle or Liverpool, what are they getting?
With Ueda going to Lille, it suggests to me that a club, whether that's Newcastle or someone else, are close to getting Fernandez-Pardo, are close to hitting that magic number. And bear in mind that Lille bought him for a touch over 10 million from Belgian football a year ago.
Oh, it's a hell of a flip. Yeah, definitely.
We know he's got a mad amount of talent, but I don't think he's ready to impact the top end of the Premier League instantly. Now, we've seen him develop a long way in a very short time. Bear in mind, he came in as a right-footed left winger who's got phenomenal close control and acceleration. But what Lille did halfway through last season is turned him into a centre forward. And it really worked. He was really good. And that's what led to Olivier Giroud becoming backup. And with the current state of affairs and Fernandez-Pardo being left out because he's been desperate to go and make a move to the Premier League, that has led to Giroud coming back in. I mean, for Davide Ancelotti, I think you have to feel a bit sorry for him. The fact that he's losing both Bouyadi, who of course made a great impression on his first game in the Premier League, and Fernandez-Pardo within the space of a week and a half, something like that. Obviously, there are different ways to leave football clubs, and Bouyadi's behaviour has been impeccable. I kind of think moving football clubs is a little bit like moving house. It does bring out the worst in people, and I think you have to bear that in mind. It's an extremely stressful, life-changing situation, really, and everything can settle down a couple of weeks later. I think Lille are right to sell him if they do get to that magic number, because, as you said, they'd be making an extraordinary profit. He is a really good player, but someone to work on. I don't think someone that you get instant consistency from. And, this is where we are, really. The really big figures that people are in the Premier League are paying for players is for potential.
Yeah.
Elite potential rather than elite achievement at this exact moment.
Yeah, it's like somebody like Victor Munoz has gone to Liverpool and obviously made an impact at the weekend. But you can't expect that every week to start with, because there's just naturally going to be a bit of inconsistency thrown in there. Folarin Balogun, really interesting. Obviously, Monaco are expecting to sell him because they didn't have him involved tonight in their game against Marseille. He feels like somebody that could make an impact in the Premier League.
Yeah, although the interest in the Premier League has not led to anything concrete so far. Monaco's plan has been to sell him since about January. It's been enormously aided, or it should have been enormously aided, by the fact that he had a great 2026 at club level. He was fantastic in the run-in for Monaco. He's proved himself to be more than just a guy who can stick the ball in the back of the net. He's proved himself to be a very good all-round player, and that's something he's really developed in his time at Monaco. He's worked very hard in his game. It's not always been pretty, but for that reason, I think it's all the more impressive. And then he had a really good World Cup. So I think they were expecting some bigger offers to come in. Now it's looking as if Serie A might be the most likely destination. But as we've seen with a lot of this transfer window, Serie A knows where it is in the food chain now. It has to wait for everyone else to make their move. And I think if you're looking at the clubs that are really going to be busy in the last couple of days of this window, I think it'll be the ones in France and Italy in particular.
Coming up on Trans Europe Express, we're going to go around the leagues.
So he was shouting, apparently, Allez l'homme, go Olympique Marseille, which, of course, is like putting oil in water when it comes to Lyon fans. They absolutely detest Olympique Marseille, and they detest Guendouzi, and they showed that in their reaction. Simon, who's more at fault in these flashpoints, though? Ferreira, the goalkeeping coach, reacted in a big way, and that led to widespread scuffles. Is it the provocateur, who in this case is Guendouzi, or is it those who take the bait? In this case, the Lyon fans, the Lyon players, and the Lyon goalkeeping coach?
Well, there's degrees of responsibility and culpability, but Guendouzi is the fire starter. Guendouzi's behaviour, as it was when he played in this country and decided that he could run around a football pitch telling everyone how poor they were in comparison to him, which ultimately got him shipped out of Arsenal.
Who did he tell that how much he
Neil
earned?
Maupay.
Neil Maupay of Brighton. Yeah.
And I think it was Wenger, wasn't it? Just about enough of him and out and said, "Doubt."
It was Arteta.
Was it Arteta?
Yeah, he did enough of him.
Sorry, it was Arteta who binned him off. And here he goes again. Now, people are responsible for their own behaviour, so everybody is culpable, and everybody in terms of the professionals on the field, the players, and the support staff that have got involved, it should have a consequence for it.
Yeah.
But he should have the primary consequence, because without his provocation, without his antagonising nature, without his ridiculous over egging of the pudding and baiting and inflammatory, the fans are not professional footballers.
Welcome back to Trans Europe Express. We are speeding towards midnight, and that means it's time to go around the leagues. Andy, should we start in the Turkish Super League? Actually, not with the Super League itself. Let's start with the nonsense between Lyon and Fenerbahce, because well done to Fenerbahce, because they've qualified for the Champions League, for the Champions League phase for the first time in a long time. But it's fair to say there was a central figure in the kerfuffle that followed Fenerbahce's success.
Yeah, the first time in 18 years that they've got through to the Champions League proper, which is incredible, really, for a club of their size. And one of the players who's made that happen is Matteo Guendouzi, of course, returning to France. Had a little bit of back and forth with the Lyon fans during the warm-up and showed them the middle finger. And then afterwards went back for seconds. All kicked off. He was attacked by Antonio Ferreira, the goalkeeping coach for Lyon, who's been indefinitely suspended by the club as they await to see what his punishment was. But Corentin Tolisso, the captain of Lyon, spoke about the chat that he had with Guendouzi afterwards, and Guendouzi explained, he was insulted, and his family was insulted, and in the time that he was warmed up, and Tolisso said to him, well, that happens every weekend. You can't be kicking off like that. Now, look, whether that should be happening every weekend, I think is a valid discussion. I have no problem with Guendouzi bringing that up at all. But this was quite a disproportionate reaction, unless it's way worse than what we're hearing now. Of course, he was given the platform by Fenerbahce to talk about this after the game as well. And I understand they want to support their player, but Guendouzi does have a history of quite erratic behaviour, I think it's fair to say.
That's a very kind way of putting it.
But it's a shame, because we know what a good player he is. This is someone who's been relatively recently in the French squad. And at 27, he's been through a ton of different clubs. And to really pin your colours to the mast and give it the big one about, being a Marseille guy, when ultimately he dropped them like a hot brick for a better contract in Turkey, I find a little bit disingenuous. Also, it kind of overshadows the fact that Fenerbahce were good on the night. They were really good. And it was a solid away performance. They defended well and were clinical when they had their opportunities in the first half. And then they really came under the pump in the second half and just about came out the other side. Now, of course, we can talk about all the big name signings that they've made. The biggest signing, in my opinion, and the best signing, has been that Vedat Muriqi. Now, those of you who stay awake for the other league section will know that I've been a fan of Muriqi for years and years and years. Kosovo's best player, and the guy who only Kylian Mbappe scored more La Liga goals for him last season, even though he played for a club ultimately in Mallorca that was relegated at the end of the season. He's great for that sort of match where he did everything right defensively as well as offensively. He holds the ball up. He's brilliant in the air. He scored the opening goal. And he's the guy, actually, that I think will be starting the games instead of Lukaku. He is their best centre-forward. There's no doubt about it. And I look forward to seeing more of him in the Champions League.
Let's switch to Portugal, because Porto, who won the Primeira Liga last season, under Francesco Farioli, have still not conceded a goal in the Portuguese top flight this season.
Can I just say that was a seamless link from Muriqi, who's described himself as ugly down the years, which I think is a little bit harsh, to Francesco Farioli's way of playing football. Look, they won 3-0 at Académico Viseu with all the goals in the first half yesterday. And yeah, look, they've got the best goalkeeper in Portugal and, well, one of the best goalkeepers in Europe in Diogo Costa. But defensively, they're very organised as well. Alberto Costa, no relation, was from Juventus, one of their biggest signings last summer as well. We talked about the fact that Santi Jimenez is coming in to get them a little bit more punch up front. Andre Silva has done pretty well since he's come back there. He opened the scoring yesterday as well. So they're going to be a really tough nut to crack. Now, Marco Silva has gone back to Portugal, to Benfica, with a big budget. They're going to be making a proper pop for the Europa League as well. There's no doubt about that. They want to end their European hex. But look, I think it's going to be really tough for Marco Silva, not just because he's going into a position in the first time in his career where you have to win every week. Look, I think he's done the right thing, because in terms of ambition, he's gone to a club where winning is expected every week. And he's not earning. He's earning about 2/3 of what Fulham offered him.
It's a test, isn't it? He could have stayed at Fulham. Comfort zone's probably not fair, but if you're a Portuguese guy,
I mean, you're not expected to win anything at Fulham.
No, but you're expected to stay up, aren't you? Yeah, that's exactly it. But if you're a Portuguese guy, a job at Benfica is enormous, right? I mean, it should be for a lot of coaches, but that's a big chance for him to really show what he can do, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's huge. And, he's got a reasonable amount of resource, of course. Signed João Palhinha now, a move that Palhinha wanted to happen all summer. I know people were linking him with Premier League moves, but his family situation meant that he wanted to go back to Lisbon. So I think that's a huge boost for them, particularly in a European sense. But yeah, Benfica haven't played yet this weekend. They play tomorrow night. Of course, Sporting have completely changed their team, but they look really good. They won 4-0 away at Rio Ave this weekend. And another big game tomorrow night, as well as Benfica Estoril. It'll be followed by the Minho derby between Braga and Guimarães, one of the big ones.
And we're going to wrap up with the Netherlands because PSV are doing Peter Bosz things again, scoring lots and lots of goals.
Yes, super fun, isn't it? I mean, they won 6-1 at Utrecht after going a goal down today. And bear in mind, they've scored 15 goals in 4 games this season. Bearing in mind, they've lost Ismail Saibari and the fact, of course, that Alassane Player, who's had awful luck with injuries since he arrived there after doing well for a number of years for Borussia Mönchengladbach, he's still not fit at the moment. But they have had the return of Ruben van Bommel, scored the opening goal today, and he just looks such a player.
Yeah, Alassane Player is one of the most wonderful but frustrating footballers because he can do things that are absolutely incredible, but then he'll miss a load of games and then he'll just kind of saunter through games. But when he's on it, Alassane Player is a real joy to watch. We've got the result of the poll, by the way. We asked you right at the top of the show how many of the European competitions will be won by English sides this season. Only 13% of you thought it would be a clean sweep. 38% of you thought that English sides would win 2 of the 3 competitions. 27% said 1. And 22%, you Eeyores, said no English clubs will win European trophies this season. Andy, a true joy, a true education over the last 3 hours. And thanks to every single one of you, wherever you're listening to us, the show simply wouldn't be the same without you. And very pleased that you're part of our club. Again, we give our love to Danny. He is the captain. He is the driving force. We are very much looking forward to him being back. Coming up after us, it's an episode of the Best of talkSPORT.
I've got to stop you there, right? Because I've heard this guff from you and Gabby today, all right? Going on about Spurs overspending, overpaying for players.
Whoa,
all right?
wait,
and I can't believe Brookie has got the cheek to come on here as a Man United fan and say that Belieber's a good deal at 70 million. He was guff last season. He didn't play.
I think you're fine. Belieber at 70 million is going to be better value for money than Savinho at 85.
Oh, mate, you're talking absolute crap.
I'll have a little bet for you. Let's have a little bet. Who has the better
Mate, you signed Anthony for 75 million. You sold Pogba for 100